TMX built. That's why oil exports up 50% over the course of the last few years. Secondly, Mr. Singh is absolutely right about the East-West grid interconnections, which is part of the energy corridor. Huge opportunities for this country. We have to be able to do more than one thing. Third point, fundamental point. We can give ourselves far more than Donald Trump can ever take away. If we have one Canadian economy, not 13, and if we just look at that agreement we got with the provinces, look at what Ontario and Nova Scotia have just announced in terms of their steps towards this, this is within our grasp.
Monsieur Blanchet, what should we be prepared to concede in our negotiations with the United States?
I want to be back to something that Mr. Carney said. You can't do something and the opposite, and you can't fill people's minds with nonsense. Quebec has, by law, its own environmental review institution, and you cannot, through a federal decision, even through a Quebec government decision, go over the BAP, as we call it. If the BAP says no,
just say
it's no.
I know.
Good.
I know,
Let's
but this
keep
is
that in mind.
This is the point. This is, if I may, this is the point. The federal government can do the following, which is to take the decision to abide by the decision of the Quebec BAP. That is within the federal government's power. That is known as cooperative federalism. That's what we need to do.
And do you understand one other point fast?
This is what we need. If we, I mean, this is what we need to do in a crisis.
Bref Moïse, and then Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah. The building of those pipelines will take at least,
what's up, Sixpa?
At least 10 to 14
Thanks,
years.
buddy.
Mr. Trump will be
welcome everybody. Sorry for the delay.
No more.
Just put the kids down. Well, my wife actually is helping me put the kids down, so I got a chance to get to the computer here.
Oil through this pipeline of yours.
We're less than a minute to go. Mr. Poilievre, I promised you next.
Nay, I don't disagree.
10 years of Liberals blocking pipelines and killing jobs.
Sounds wild when you say
that. We actually need to get things done. We need a change, and our Conservative plan for change will repeal the No New Pipelines law. It will create a true one-stop shop, set up shovel-ready zones with pre-permitting so that we can approve LNG liquefaction export plants, mines, pipelines, nuclear plants, and also hydroelectric dams so that we can generate the power we need to be strong, self-reliant, and stand on our own 2 feet for a change.
Last quick word to Mr. Carney.
Okay, quick word. Bringing it back to what we were talking about, which is tariffs, the threats to Canada, how to negotiate. We need these options. We need these options to build domestically, to build one Canadian economy. We need to act. We need to diversify our trade partners.
And that
will
is
give
our
us
time in this segment. That is our time. Okay, you know my job tonight. I got to be the heavy guy here every now and then, making sure everybody comes to time. And I'm keeping an eye as well on making sure that everybody gets rough justice over here. That concludes our first section and our first debate. Up next, affordability and the cost of living.
Our goal is to double the pace of housing construction.
We will lower your bills, build homes you can actually afford.
Il faudra parler des entreprises du Québec, des travailleurs du Québec, des aînés du Québec.
Is everything coming in okay, folks? Is the quality all right? This is my first time kind of live streaming, so let me know if anything's going wrong or not. And welcome to everybody who's here. Appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. I know there's other channels that are also streaming, so.
Many provinces, including some provinces with Conservative governments, have ambitious housing targets, none of which have been met. Why do you think your housing plan will be any different?
Let me start by talking to the young people of the nation and those who are aspiring to home ownership. You know, it was only 10 years ago you could buy an average house for $450,000. But in the last lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled, rising faster
Audio is a
than
little
any country
low on the
in
feed.
the G7. And so now our youth cannot afford a home, and our seniors are worried about being evicted. We can't afford a fourth Liberal term of rising housing costs. We need a change. And our Conservative plan for change will, 1, axe the federal sales tax on new homes. 2, incentivize municipalities to cut their construction taxes to bring houses down in cost by $100,000. 3, sell off federal land for homes. And 4, train up 350,000 young trades workers who can help build those homes. Because you deserve a home, and we're going to make it happen for a change.
Also issue of affordability. Mr. Singh, you get the next question. How do you bring down grocery prices in the midst of a trade war?
I appreciate the question. This is a big concern. When I talk to Canadians, they tell me they're really feeling squeezed from the cost of living. That's one of the top things that people tell me about. People are saying, I can't afford to buy groceries. Every time I go
The
to
volume
grocery
looks
store,
like it's maxed out. I'm not sure
ongoing worry
why it's coming in a little bit
and
low.
this feeling of anxiety that can I actually afford the things that my family needs? On top of that, people are worried about the cost of homes. I think those are the two biggest things I hear. So we can do things about this. Other countries have taken concrete steps. We can put in a price cap on food essentials.
What's up,
France has done
Dave?
it,
What's up,
Greece has
Zach?
done it to great success. It's brought down the cost of food.
But
significantly
yeah, Nene, he's
in
been
both
stealing a
those
lot of
jurisdictions.
plans.
We can also ban corporate landlords from buying up the affordable homes to keep homes that are affordable
The
affordable.
juggernaut.
We can make things better for Canadians, but it requires having the courage to take on the powerful corporations that are ripping you off, that are price gouging you. And we know that price gouging is one of the major reasons why food prices are going up. You're never going to hear Pierre Poilievre or Mr. Carney talk about the fact that these are the corporations
Thank you,
ripping you
Mr.
off.
Singh. That's
I will.
time. Mr. Blanchet, I want to ask you about old age security, which will soon cost this country $100 billion annually. We understand you would like to expand it. How would you pay for that?
All right, let me see if I could fix that.
Just for everybody, because the Liberals have created a discrimination against elders which are 65 to 75 years old, having 10% less income from federal government than those who are over 75. But the best way to do it is to have everybody pay its fair share in terms of tax, which means that one should not be entitled to hide money in fiscal paradise in order not to pay him or his clients or friends, not to pay billions of dollars in taxes that could be used to help the city.
Oh shit, what happened here?
Which have increased dramatically in
Merci,
price.
Monsieur
in Quebec
Blanchet.
recently.
That's time for this one. Mr. Carney, I want to ask you about housing, which over the past decade has gone from a problem to a crisis while the Liberals were in power. Is your policy on getting homes built any different from your predecessors?
How's my volume now? Is it a little bit lower than the actual?
This is one of the reasons
debate?
why I entered this contest, because of the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, the housing crisis, and the Trump crisis to help fix it.
Crisis.
The housing approach is fundamentally different because we need a fundamentally different approach. We need to build housing at a rate that we haven't seen since the end of the Second World War. We do need a fundamentally different approach. And with the fundamentally different approach, we can build an entirely new industry. So the question is how? Now, Mr. Poilievre and I agree on some things. Okay, I agree as well on reducing the tax on first-time home purchases as a way to buy. But I am focused on increasing the supply of homes.
Yeah,
And doing that in a way that uses Canadian technology and modular prefabricated housing, that uses Canadian lumber, including in reinforced timber, and uses Canadian workers. And in all respects, we're scaling up to double the rate of home building.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. That's time. We now move to open forum here. And Mr. Singh, you get the first comment. Many of you have pledged to cut the GST on many aspects of buying a home. And Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, would you cut the GST on anything else in order to make life more affordable?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm the only one on this stage that fought to give people a GST holiday. Interestingly, while that GST holiday helps working class folks, middle class folks,
Costa.
by
How are you,
taking
Mike?
off the GST off essentials, the Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre voted against that. They opposed the idea of giving people, actual folks that need help, a tax break, and would rather
these
give
modular
millionaires
homes,
a
I don't
tax
know
break,
how
which
good
shows
these are
you
gonna be, man.
whose side he's on, which is not
It's essentially
surprising.
gonna turn
But
into
what
like
is surprising that
favelas
Mr. Carney
in
also
Brazil,
said
where
that
everyone's
giving people a break on their GST is a
friggin'
bad
living on
idea.
top of each
Mr.
other
Carney,
like
why do you
bunch of
think
rats.
giving a tax break to capital gains folks that earn more than $1 million is a good idea, but helping a family afford
If
their
the audio
groceries,
is any better, let
helping
me
people
know,
afford their
guys.
bills for
I
their
don't really know
internet,
how
their
much
cell
more I
phone, their
could
home
change it,
heating,
but-
giving them relief to take the GST off those is a bad idea, but giving a tax break to people who really only earn over more than $1.4 million, that's somehow a good idea.
Okay, you went after
That's
Mr.
your numbers.
You went after Mr. Poilievre first, so I'm going to give him the first shot to respond.
Well, Mr. Carney, the reality is that housing costs doubled under the Liberal government. While Justin Trudeau made exactly the same promises that you are now repeating today. He promised that he would double home building. In fact, home building went down. He promised that he'd reduce the cost. In fact, it went up. And here we are. Mark Carney is asking for a fourth Liberal term, repeating the exact same Liberal promises that priced you out of a house. Just a few weeks ago, before the election, the Liberals voted against taking the GST off new homes, and they have continued to build up bureaucracies that block construction. We need a change so that you can afford a home, and our change will be, again, to axe the sales tax on new homes, incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development costs. Train up 350,000 young people who can be in the trades to build those homes and sell off the land that is going to be needed in order to build homes. That is a real plan,
move forward in life?
a real plan for you to own a home and
but
afford your life for a change.
Mr. Carney, they're coming at you from both sides. What do you say?
Okay. I know it may be difficult, Mr. Poilievre. You spent years running against Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax, and they're both gone. Okay, they're both gone. And we're in a new
impersonation
and we're
of them with the
in
same
a
policies tonight.
very different. Look, I'm a very different person from Justin Trudeau. Focus is on results.
Were you his
and so
economic
how
advisor?
to drive results in the housing market?
Yeah, Pierre's got to
You've
keep hammering
change the
him on
model
that.
of building. You've got to increase the financing for housing developers.
Again, welcome everybody.
$25
Glad you're
billion
tuning in.
on the table for those housing developers. $10 billion for deeply affordable homes. Cutting development charges in half, lowering the cost of the building of those homes by 20%, and lowering the emissions and the run costs of those homes by another 20%. This is how you drive affordability. This is how you bring young people back into the housing
Yeah,
market.
Monsieur
exactly what
Blanchet
Trudeau
and then Mr.
promised.
Singh.
You claim to be very different from Mr. Trudeau. Now, the point is to show that you are any better than Mr. Trudeau. You claim to have a lot of experience
point,
in
Nene.
many things, and you know things. Last time we had somebody saying that they knew things, it was the senators, and they killed the law that protected supply management because they
I don't
knew
even know
better
why the
than
hell
us and were
Blanchet is
elected
here.
by nobody.
This guy already admitted
Exactly
he's not
like
trying to
you
be
are
prime minister.
today. You say that you are a great crisis manager. Which one?
I mean, if
heard
he
of
can take
nothing. As
votes
far
away
as I
from the
know,
Liberals, I'm
Brexit
happy with that,
happened,
but-
even if you were against it. You say you are a great negotiator. What have you negotiated but fiscal paradises in Bermudas or Cayman Islands? You have to prove something, and you have to reveal what you own in those companies if you want people.
Look at
to
Carney
believe you.
laughing at
Mr.
his
Singh, you wanted
English.
to-
Yes, returning to the topic of housing. Now, it's very
So
important. Obviously, we
rude.
need to build homes that people can afford. Mr. Poilievre had the opportunity to show us what he could do. He was the Minister of Housing under Stephen Harper. And during that time, guess how many homes he built? He built 6 homes during that entire time. This is not something
That's
you can
amazing.
trust to build homes. He built 6
200,000.
homes. And this has
200,000.
been confirmed again and again.
That's awesome to hear,
206
Lopez.
homes. That's it. Now, the problem, though, with Mr. Carney
These
is, while
Portuguese people
he's
gotta
laid out
smarten
a
up, you
plan,
know?
the problem is that when he was the chair of Brookfield Investments, this is a company that made a strategic decision to buy up affordable homes in cities like Toronto where people were paying a decent rent. And they purposely bought those homes, kicked out the tenants, and jacked up the rents. That is not someone you can trust, sadly, to deal with the housing
Yeah,
crisis.
my
when
brother's a
Mr. Carney,
framer, Mike,
he
and
profited off of it.
We're
he's
gonna
been
get
finding it
responses
pretty
here,
tough
Mr. Poilievre.
to-
First,
to
Mr.
work
Carney
through the
second.
winters and stuff.
First of all, Mr. Singh,
gonna hold this up to remind you.
the Toronto
6 right here.
Star, the Toronto Star debunked your falsehoods
it was
on
6
that.
homes, and
I
that's the
appreciate
facts.
neither Liberals or NDP are very good with math, but in that
You're
year, the
clearly-
year I
you
was
can
the
count up to
minister, if I
6, which
could,
is great.
the year
Let's let him
I
Mr.
was
Singh, let's let him answer.
in the year
It's
I
not
was
high enough, though.
the year I was minister, we had 200,000 homes built, and guess what the average price of a home was at the time? $450,000.
And guess what happened
And
at the end of the Conservative reign?
one bedrooms rented
doubled.
out for $900, and that since that time, housing costs have actually doubled under the Liberals.
They doubled
and
under
now we have
Conservatives, too.
now we have Mr. Carney making tens of billions of
Man,
dollars of
Singh is
spending
so
promises that
They
will
doubled under you
ultimately
as well.
continue to build bureaucracy. We don't need more bureaucracy in Ottawa. We tried that for 10 Liberal years, Mr. Carney. What we need is to build homes in communities.
Certainly
and
don't
that
need
means
Conservatives.
axing taxes on home building and getting the government out of the way so that builders can
I mean, if they
actually
weren't going to
build.
let the Greens in, they're
Mr.
not going to let
Carney,
the
Can I pick up-
you are on
PPC in.
housing, we need
Can
a
I-
change, and you, sir, are not a change.
The PPC don't even hold
I'm
a
going to pick
spot
up
in the
on
House,
I
right?
thought that
So
answer was quite revealing. The first thing
And
is
their
that
polling numbers are
it's
too
an
low to
attitude
qualify.
towards housing that absolutely ignores affordable housing, deeply affordable
Would- it
housing,
would've been nice to
issues
see him,
with
though.
vulnerable people, ignores the rental market, ignores all other aspects of it. So the 6 are the relevant. Mr. Singh is absolutely right. The 6 are the relevant.
200,000.
The 200,000 are a different part of the housing market. There are many Canadians. There are many Canadians at different income levels. The second thing it reveals is a misunderstanding a misunderstanding. I'll
Good
be
to hear,
polite,
Tosel.
of how
I'm a pie
the
of two.
government's
My wife is
balance sheet
dealing
can
with them right now.
catalyze
She
enormous
was nice enough
private
to let me come
investment.
down and
that is what
and
we
live
need to
stream
do to
this.
solve the housing crisis. It happens to be what we need to do as a whole to address the economic crisis that's been forced on us by President Trump.
Hey, if the Liberals win, I might
Yeah.
have to. I might have to move to Alberta. Kevin.
You have spoken much
'Cause I
more
don't
than
think I
I
could
have,
deal
so I
with
won't
this,
ask a question. I will
this
make a
crap
statement
anymore.
instead. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying that you cannot do what you pretend that you are able to do. We just have no proof so far. I'm saying quite clearly that you cannot be entitled to do it alone. You cannot be entitled to hold all the power in your two hands. You cannot go out there and fix things for Canada and Quebec without being seriously checked by serious people. You cannot go out there and speak for Quebec without Quebec having its own strong voice to protect itself and to promote its different economy. So if you want to collaborate, let's say right now that whatever happens, even if minority government happens, you will be a partner with the different Quebec economy and identity.
I'm looking
which
to
you
probably
have been
start a little bit of a farm here, Mike.
not interested in for the economic
Not
part
as, you know,
and
probably
not
big as you were
respectful
running,
for
but
the identity
Let,
part.
Yeah,
let me get
Cambridge
Mr.
and
Singh in at this
Kitchener
point.
have
Can
a
you tell us
decent
what's
Portuguese
the first thing you would
population.
do to make life more affordable for Canadians?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do, and I've laid out some of those things. I think fundamentally, I'm the only person on stage that not only fought for real relief for people in terms of affordability, I'm the only one that fought for pharmacare that actually makes life more affordable by giving people medication coverage.
Pharmacare,
dental care that gives people
This guy
more
thinks he did
affordability
it
by
all.
letting them access their services if you're a senior and a kid. I fought for childcare to make sure people could afford childcare. All measures that Mr. Poilievre voted against, all measures that Mr. Blanchet voted against. So if you want someone that's going to fight for you in Ottawa to actually make life more affordable, you can't entrust all the power to Mr. Carney. He doesn't have a track record of making life more affordable for people, but we do. So vote for a New Democrat, and we'll continue this work to make life more affordable for you, while the Conservatives and the Bloc have voted against those measures to make life affordable, because that's not who they care about. New Democrats are in it for you.
Pierre Poilievre.
The number one expense for families today is taxes, more than they spend on food, clothing, and shelter combined. This
Have you all
after
noticed that
10
Pierre's the
years
only
of
one
liberal
also
tax
with the Canadian
increases.
pin?
We can't afford
Like,
a
Carney's
fourth
got this
term of
stupid,
high
like,
liberal
little white
taxes.
daisy
That's why
thing or
conservatives
flower
have a
thing.
plan for change.
And the
that
other two
plan
guys
includes
don't have
voted
it.
against
Pierre's
every
the
measure
only
to
one
help
with the
people out.
Canadian flag
cutting
up there.
income taxes by 15% for the average worker and seniors, saving a working couple up to $2,000, rewarding hard work again. Because
How much
hard
do you think
work
childcare
is
costs?
actually being
Dental care
punished.
costs.
Oh, and now
is
mine is too
actually
low.
being
I did
punished
turn it down a bit,
because
so I
of the
wasn't
very high
overpowering. Let me
taxes.
see.
Now, the Liberals promised 10 years ago they would lower them. They actually raised taxes on 9 out of 10 Canadians. We need a change in this country because your hard work should once again pay off with a powerful paycheck that buys you an affordable home
you wanna save
on a
people
safe street.
$2,000?
And that's what we will deliver.
You want to save people $2,000, but cut their dental care,
That's
which
false.
is thousands of dollars.
How's
Cut
that?
their
Is that a little
childcare,
bit
which is
better,
$1,000.
Willie?
Cut pharmacare coverage, which is thousands of dollars.
False.
That's not a very good math deal right there. You're going to save people $2,000, but cost them tens of thousands of dollars. That's why you cannot afford Conservatives, and you certainly can't trust the Liberals
Mark
on their
Carney's
own.
turn.
You need New Democrats.
Mark Carney.
I'm going to reinforce that point, and then I'll respond to Mr. Blanchet. Childcare in this country, $3,000 to $10,000 a year for a family, depending on where you live.
Province, jurisdiction.
Depending on where you live, that's what's being saved there. $800 per trip to the dentist. We've expanded dental
Province,
care to 8
jurisdiction.
million Canadians.
Because we
8
forced-
million Canadians.
because New Democrats were there.
Pharmacare. These are fundamental issues for affordability. We're talking about affordability and taking them off in order.
Pierre never said he was taking them off. Pierre's already had said that he was going to try to expand them.
Income taxes
Working with Quebec.
for Canadians.
Yes, absolutely. Throughout the short time I've been Prime Minister, working directly with
Nene really does not like the NDP.
our Minister of Foreign Affairs, our Minister of Finance, are from Quebec. Quebec and Quebec issues, whether it's
Why
supply
haven't you answered
management,
Mr.
language,
Legault's letter? He asked 5 things in a letter. He reduced his expectations.
We're talking about-
And you did not even answer him. And tonight, you are so much in love with Quebec.
Steve, the question that Canadians have to ask
Why vote
is
for
whether
Conservatives
why,
when the same
He's got the
costing
Mr.
tens of
Singh,
thousands?
Mr. Singh, sorry, he has the floor.
They need to shut his mic off again.
the question you have to ask is, after a decade of liberal promises, can you afford food? Is your housing more affordable than it used to be? What is your cost of living like compared to what it was a decade ago? And are you prepared to elect the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal staffers all over again for a 4th term? Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that
That's
you are
painful.
any different
That's painful.
than the previous 10 years of Liberal government?
25 seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
Look, I do my own talking points. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, I bet you do.
The biggest risk we have to affordability, the biggest risk we have to this economy is Donald Trump. So
Oh
first and
my
foremost, we've got
God.
to get that right. Secondly,
This
we
guy
need
needs to
do
stop
it
with the
in a
Donald
way
Trump, man.
that brings everyone along together. That means preserving pharmacare, dental care, child care, reinforcing health care, spending our whole
Intrusion
social safety.
intrusion
The
in
clock is
Quebec
on-
jurisdiction
the-
over and again. I like
the
if
clock is
we're
on
any
zero.
better than we are.
The clock is
there
on zero.
one thing Canadians can do that Quebecers cannot do? You are doing intrusions in our jurisdiction with our
So,
money.
if
pretending
anybody
you
is
are
still
better.
kind
And
of
most the time you
on
try
the
to
fence here
copy
about
what we did
who they're going to
with
vote
our
for,
own money
conservative or whatnot,
against us. What's that as a policy? Don't you have your
let me just
own
mute
thing
this
to
for a
just care
second so
about?
I'm not talking over him. People need to understand that regardless if there's this Trump tariff situation, before Trump and the tariffs, life was not any better. So anybody who's confused about who they need to vote for, you get rid of the Trump tariff problem, everything is still unaffordable. You still can't do anything. So the liberal policies and everything, that's what's causing people issues. They shouldn't just be focusing solely on Trump, but that's what Carney's trying to do, is switch everybody to this, as he said, Trump crisis.
Come to our border.
Okay, same format, one-on-one questions and then open debate.
So this is
Monsieur Blanchet,
about
you get to
public
go
safety and
first in this
security,
one.
okay.
Public safety and security. For a lot of people, that means the fentanyl crisis. I'd like to know what you could contribute to ending that
It's not just
crisis
fentanyl, it's
in
all the
this country.
crime and everything.
Fentanyl
Yeah,
crisis
everything
is
was
a
the same
very
before Trump.
serious
Exactly,
issue,
Nene.
Which is a bit less important in Quebec than it is in British Columbia. I think the whole border thing is the real issue. Immigration is a very
Oh, but they
important
took
issue for
immigration off the
Quebecers.
board. You can't
Immigration
talk
has to
about
be
that.
dealt with in an orderly fashion. Our borders are not dealt with in an orderly fashion. The rules are not respected. The rules are unclear. Some rules even invite people to hide for 2 weeks illegally before coming out. Some things has to be done. The situation of one person asking for asylum may take as much as 4 years without us reducing the number in order to deal with them in a human way. The services for every citizen in Quebec are being reduced because we cannot.
Again, I just want to
afford
thank all you
the
guys for
fact
joining
that
in
we
on
are
the live
receiving
stream here
much
and
more
watching this.
people in Quebec from this specific type of
I know you guys could be
immigration than we
anywhere
can
else,
afford,
so I
and we
appreciate
cannot
you
teach
taking the
them
time to be
French.
here
Next
and
time,
watching
Mr.
it with
Blanchet,
me.
We can, of course, return to the immigration issue during open debate should you
We
choose
will.
to. Mr. Carney,
Ooh,
question for you.
we
The
will.
liberal
I like
gun
that.
buyback policy, not considered a success by many people. Reviving it is in your platform.
Yeah.
Why would it work this time?
Yeah, I think, well, what we've seen with that policy is some success at the commercial level, but not at the individual level, because it hasn't been. in my
It had
opinion,
no
it hasn't been
success. What are you
organized,
talking about?
Properly, and it needs to be organized properly. And
You never
instructed the
collected one
Minister of,
gun.
National Security and Public Safety in order to do that. So part of this is a different focus of government, a focus on results, a focus on clear milestones in the short term. Let me make a broader point, though, on gun, which is that we have a problem with guns coming over borders, which is why we've tightened our borders. We have an issue, though, with a gun industry that is continually coming up with new forms of assault rifles, mass killing machines. We banned over 2,000 of these. Every single time there has been a vote in the House of Commons on gun control, Mr. Poilievre has voted against it. You can't be tough on crime unless you're tough on guns.
Mr. Poilievre, you can come back on that in the open debate if you want to, but my question for you in this segment is, Indigenous people are statistically overrepresented in our correction system. Are you concerned that your tough on crime platform will make that worse?
I'm concerned that
if a
Indigenous
population
people are
is
disproportionately the victims of crime. I give you the example of
this is like in the States where they say
wonderful
13% of the
group of
population
Indigenous
is
people who
black,
came
but like
under attack
80%
in
of the crimes
Saskatchewan,
is committed by
and many
them.
of them were murdered.
So if
killer
they have a higher
was out
population
of
of
jail
indigenous
after
individuals
60
in jail, it might be
prior
because they are
convictions.
committing more
This
crimes.
is the result of 10 years of liberal laws that allow the same offenders to be released
What's up,
dozens and
Mary?
dozens of times,
He did mention it quite a
even
few
when it's known
times.
they
The
are dangerous.
Trump crisis, he
We
calls
can't
it, you
risk
know?
a fourth liberal term of soft on crime
I should have put a
policies.
Trump
We need
counter
a change.
somewhere.
And
That would have been a good
conservative plan
idea.
for change. We'll bring in a 3 strikes you're outlaw. 3 convictions for serious crimes, you go to jail for at least 10 years, maybe for life, no chance of parole or bail. We will bring in life sentences for traffickers of fentanyl, human beings, and guns, and we will secure our borders to keep the illegal
Thank you,
guns
Mr.
out.
Poilievre.
Look
That's
at Jagmeet
Mr.
just
Singh, your
eyeballing him.
question is about the RCMP, because you've got RCMP reform in your platform. What, in your view, is the problem with the RCMP?
Well, some of the basis for this is the concern that's been raised in more rural communities and northern communities that there have been some serious concerns about violence or inappropriate use of force when it comes to the execution of their duties. We want to make sure that we've got a top-tier police force that provides security and safety to those communities in a way that's sensitive and understanding of the communities they're serving. I also think what's very important is for Indigenous communities, Indigenous policing. This is an area of deep concern. I think everyone in our country should be safe.
What is
You should
Indigenous
be able to be safe
policing?
at
What is
home,
that?
Safe when you go
Them
to
have
work,
their own police
safe if
force?
you take public transit, safe for your kids to be able to play in the local playground, and that's something I'm committed to. The other area that I'm focused on when it comes to public safety is making sure we prevent crime before it happens, and that's why we want to see increased investments in our border security. We saw under the Conservatives, they cut 1,100 border officers in one day. So that prevented our ability to keep our borders safe. That stops those
Okay,
materials from
Mr.
coming
Singh,
into the
that's
country.
time.
Marcel, that's a good question.
During the open debate segment,
They decided apparently it wasn't worth it. Although they said in the open debate they'll talk about immigration.
On the last answer you gave, which is, you have pledged to be the first prime minister in this country to use the notwithstanding clause, setting aside charter rights of, as you call them, multiple murderers. Why do you think that's necessary?
To be clear, I want to uphold the charter rights of Canadians under Section 7 to life, liberty, and security of the person. Right now, that right is violated by multiple murderers who are given discounts. The case in question was a gentleman who went into a mosque and shot dead 6 innocent worshipers. He got, according to this ruling, only one 25-year sentence, meaning he can be out in his 50s. He only serves 4 years for every murder that he carried out. That is outrageous, and I will use the constitutional powers that are created for this purpose to ensure that mass murderers stay in maximum security penitentiary for life. They will only come out in a box. We will also pass tough new laws that prevent repeat offenders from getting out. If you commit 3 offenses under the 3 strikes law I propose, you will not be allowed out of jail until you prove that you are drug-free, that you are behaved perfectly, and that you've learned an employable skill, and you've served a 10-year
I don't see any
sentence.
problems with this.
We cannot allow liberal crime and chaos to go on terrorizing our communities. What we need is a real plan for change so that we can bring back the safety and the security that Canadians used to take for granted.
Let me get Mr. Carney to respond to that. Do you think that's an appropriate use of the notwithstanding clause of the charter?
Here he goes.
I
He's
think
going to spin it
that
into abortion, I bet
one of the
you.
core responsibilities of the federal government, Prime Minister, is to defend the fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians.
Coming from the
And
people
those fundamental
who
rights and
who
liberties
froze
of
bank
Canadians
accounts.
are outlined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is 43 years old literally today. I think it's a very dangerous slope to override
Yeah, exactly crazy.
judgments of the Supreme Court of Canada. In fact, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms exists to protect Canadians from people like us on the stage.
Where was the freedoms with the Freedom Convoy?
Politicians who may use their power to override fundamental rights. And
Like
issue
the Liberal Party
using
did.
by the
Come
federal government,
on,
I'll stop
man.
here, is not where you start, but where will you stop?
Mr. Polyev, I should get Mr. Polyev on that. Is it a slippery
I'm quite
slope if
interested
you use it in this
too,
case?
I must say, I would be quite interested too, because Mr. Carney said that he didn't want us to
Hey,
use
Crystal.
notwithstanding
I appreciate that. Yeah, guys, hit the like button.
before.
Then my first time doing this, so I'm still a little bit
Yesterday
rough
he said
here.
That he felt that it was wrong to use the notwithstanding clause after a law is adopted. So if we cannot use it before and we cannot use it after, it means that Mr. Carney believes that we should never use it. But it is very important. And the Ford case made it clear. The Constitution says how it should be used, but never how or what we will do with it, because it's the prerogative of the provinces. So do you want the Supreme Court to overrule another judgment of the same Supreme Court because you don't like it? Because that
Appreciate
may
it,
be
Crystal.
being
Thank
the
you so
hell of a
much.
Politician, as you define them.
Well, let me just start by
back?
saying,
Okay,
first of
Mr.
all, yeah, thank you. I just started by saying, let's not let Mr. Polyev get away with making this ludicrous claim that anyone on this stage thinks that violent crime should get a less severe penalty. Obviously, that is not a special position that he's taking. Everyone agrees that horrible
Oh,
crimes
now they're too
should have
low?
horrible
Sorry,
sentences.
Mary. Hold on, let me
Judges
see if
are
I can
equipped
fix
to do
that.
So don't let Mr. Polyev's rhetoric confuse people. Obviously, everyone agrees that if someone does something horrible, they should pay a horrible price for it. There should be appropriate sentence that's put in place by a judge. But what I'm concerned about is all of what Mr. Polyev is talking about is after the fact. Now, there's heinous things that happen, and there needs to be severe penalties put in place. But we also need to keep communities safe. And that's what my focus is. Well, how do we stop crime before it happens? Much of the violent crime that's committed is committed by illegal handguns and firearms that come across the border. Now, Mr. Polyev has admitted that as well, that it is illegal handguns and illegal weapons that are used in violent crime. So our plan is, let's stop those illegal weapons getting into our country in the first place. And the way we do that is by having stronger border security officers and having more people on the border. Mr. Pierre Poilievre, when he was in power in the Conservatives, they cut the number of border officers.
Okay.
They reduced the number, weakening our borders.
Keeping an eye on
You
time
can't
here.
trust them
Let's
to
get
do
back
these
to
type of
Mr.
things.
Polyev on the issue of whether, in using the notwithstanding clause under these circumstances, would be a kind of a slippery slope and encourage politicians to use it more.
No, we will use it to protect the charter rights of law-abiding Canadians. I'm interested in the rights of victims. Mr. Carney seems to be very interested in the rights of criminals. He says that it's dangerous for me to ensure that mass murderers stay behind bars for life. You know what's dangerous? Turning them loose on our streets. I don't think you appreciate, sir, the chaos that is unfolding in communities. In Toronto right now, the police have been forced to tell people to just let the thief steal the car. When they break into the house, just take the keys. Just let them take the keys so that you don't get hurt. People are living in terror in many of our communities precisely because of the catch and release bail law, C-75, which requires judges release the accused at the earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions. Every single member of your Liberal caucus and your Liberal cabinet voted in favor of this bill, and they are all determined to keep it in place despite constant promises to the contrary. Mr. Carney, Canadians deserve to live in peace, security. That is the right that I'm fighting for a change.
I'm fighting for that as well, and let me be specific about two things.
How's that? Is the audio any better now?
The first is with respect to these issues of car theft.
Oh, actually, you know what?
invasion, and I'll use
think it's
the
over
greater
here that I
the
need to fix
GTA
it. Hold
area where there has been sharp increase. How do you attack that? You attack it several ways. One, you
How's that now?
increase the
Is the
criminal
audio a little bit
penalties
better now?
for that happening. Particularly if you're part of a gang, particularly if you use a firearm.
And you will do that?
And we're doing so. We've committed to doing so. You put in place a reverse onus in terms of bail so that it has to be proven that there's not a risk, which we've also committed to. And then you go to what Mr. Singh was talking about, which is we have to reinforce our frontiers. That's why we're
Thanks, guys.
committing
Yeah,
to
yeah,
an extra 1,000
I finally found
Canada
the
Border
proper
Service
set.
agents, an extra 1,000 RCMPs. That's why, as part of the broader fentanyl initiative, where we've added to the RCMP there, we've added drones, we're adding helicopters, we're adding surveillance, and we're going to the other end of the chain with respect to car theft,
bring my
which
audio
is
down
tightening
just a little
security
bit,
at the ports.
but I'll leave
This
this
is what we need. In order to get results, you need to focus where at both ends of the chains in the federal government.
Jagmeet Singh.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about one of the issues that has come up is the idea of the public safety concerns around the overdose crisis and how this is
when I looked on
devastating
my
our
phone,
communities.
the
We're
audio
seeing
sounded fine, but
so
for
many
listening
lives being
here, I
lost.
understand why it was
In
off.
that, we know that one of the ways to address that is by investing in some of the solutions like mental health services and rehabilitation services. Services keep our communities safe, having access to those good services. Both Mr. Carney and Mr. Poilievre are proposing cutting government spending and cutting those services. That's not going to make our communities safer. We need to see better investments in rehabilitation services, more investments in mental health. We need to respond to this serious crisis in our country with care and compassion. I met with Moms Stop the Harm, an organization of moms that have lost their children to this opioid overdose crisis. They've literally had their children have died because of this. And they're saying we need to do everything possible to save lives, to stop this death from happening. And I think we need to listen to those moms, and that's my commitment.
Mr. Blanchet.
Two things as rapidly as possible. First, we believe that we should act on crime gangs and organizations, defining them as we do for terrorist organization. We have to protect our kids from the violence of those gangs, from the drugs being sold by those gangs, from the guns and whatever else being stolen, sale being by those gangs.
Sold?
And not sold, being, you purchase a thing and selling, sold by those gangs. And we mostly have to protect our kids from being recruited by those gangs, becoming violent at 13 and 14 and 16 years old, because this is the real fear of parents like I am. This is a very dangerous situation. I want to come back to immigration because we said that we would come back to immigration. Do you remember the Century Initiative, a sad memory? Officially, they said that they had not considered Quebec difference. They had not considered Quebec language. They wanted Canada to be a 100 million people country by the end of the century. Mr. Barton told me himself
What about now? Can you
that
hear me
he
now?
had not even thought about the Quebec difference in that analysis. And one of his closest collaborators is now a close consider to Mr. Carney, which seems to be part of that kind of project or ideology. So it is impossible for Canada to have all those people come into Canada. It is impossible for Quebec to receive all those people. And in Quebec, we have the language and values and secularity of the state issue, which is very important.
Shit, man.
I say, pause. Let's do things properly. Let's receive migrants in an orderly fashion and successfully.
This is such a
as
train wreck.
measure
I'm so
of
sorry,
respect
guys.
for them
I'm
also.
trying to
Poilievre, you
figure
wanted
this
to work.
out still.
I speak to families all the time who are terrified by the scourge of drugs and illegal
Okay, is
guns.
this any better
And you
now?
know those guns
Can
are
you hear
not
me now?
Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle. So when the Liberals try to ban hunting rifles, they're really going after the wrong people. 90% of guns that come into that are used in crime are smuggled illegally over the porous liberal.
Okay, so that's
run
good now. All right.
borders.
The
And
border
that's
that you
why the
cut the
police.
border officers.
It's not true, and that's
You
why
literally
the
cut
police.
the border officers
The police
in the
actually,
facts.
if I could, the police actually endorsed
do it
me.
again,
The police in Barrie, in Peel, in Sault Ste. Marie have all endorsed me because they know that I will go after the gun smugglers and criminals with 2,000 extra frontline border guards that will stop the guns
After you
from
cut
coming
them,
in.
now you wanna hire
But unlike the Liberals and NDP, I will not ban hunting rifles. The Liberals want to
We never
protect.
wanted to ban
I want to
them.
protect Canadians
Yep.
from criminals. The Liberals want to protect turkeys from hunters. I think we know which one makes the most
Mr. Carney,
sense.
quick intervention, Mr. Carney, then I got a question for each of you before this segment's out.
Okay. We absolutely fully support hunting and rights of hunters and Indigenous Canadians.
The
But I wanna
CCFR
raise
has
an issue
already
which is a
talked about
serious
this
issue.
numerous
Hold on a
times
second.
about how many guns they banned.
There are people, we're in Montreal, in Toronto, across this country, who fear going to their synagogue, fear going to their community center, fear taking their children, leaving their children in school. And this has to stop. This is it's totally unacceptable. So what we're proposing is to make it a criminal offense to threaten or to impede anyone from
Because he's a punk. He's disrespectful,
to
Junior.
their place of worship, their school, their community center. This, it pains me that we have to do it, because this is not what we should be doing as Canadians, of course.
Okay.
But we will put that in place.
Let me get
And this is a fundamental issue with respect
Let me
to
get
any
10
citizen.
seconds
Sharp
from each
sticks, I
of you
like
before
that,
this segment's
Buzz.
out on what you perceive to be the biggest security threat to Canada right now. 10 seconds each. Mr. Polyev.
The physical security threat to our country
10
is
seconds.
the
Come on,
rampant
man.
crime wave that is running out of control. After the last decade, we had a 116% increase in gun crime. We
Okay,
need to
that's
lock
10
up the
seconds.
criminals.
I got to hold you to
and
10
secure the borders.
seconds. Mr. Carney?
Well, we're in a security section. I think we didn't have a chance to talk about anything internationally. I think the biggest security threat to Canada is China.
Oh, your good friend
Singh.
China, eh?
Biggest security threat, illegal guns and drugs coming across the border, and cuts to services that would make our public safety and security even worse.
Last word to Monsieur Blanchet.
The fact that neither Quebec or Canada is able to protect itself, and that we are still dependent and entirely dependent on American to protect us.
Okay, that is the end of that.
It's a good
section,
observation,
gentlemen. Up
Misty.
next,
I don't think
energy
it's really
and climate.
working that well. Pierre's pretty on the ball.
Improving pipelines, getting things built, unleashing production.
We are unlocking major infrastructure projects.
No, you're not.
Including in conventional energy, oil and gas.
We're speaking thousands of dollars a year for each family to pay for the damages.
Yeah, Misty, he's trying to separate himself from China by saying they're our biggest threat, but this guy's got them in their back pocket, or they got him in his
Energy
back
and
pocket.
climate change. I know how much all of you love talking about pipelines, so here we go. Mr. Singh, to you first. Should Canada build new pipelines to get our oil and gas to market?
Not unless
Well,
indigenous
it's not a
people
approach
say
I favor
yes.
with public money. There's not any projects that are on the table, so it's not a specific project to look at. I favor, when it comes to the environment, building an east-west energy grid that connects low-cost energy and allows for families to reduce their electricity costs. But let's put this all in context. We're talking about what our energy solutions are in the context of a climate crisis. And we're not just talking about a climate crisis in the far future. We're living it right now. I remember I met a mom.
Junior,
a
he's been
couple
talking
years
about
ago before
Trump
I had
too.
kids,
The
who told me she
Trump
was worried
crisis,
about
he
taking
called
her
it
kids
earlier.
out on some days because of the forest fires in BC. It meant that it was unsafe for kids to go outdoors. Fast forward to when I became a parent just a couple years after that, and I literally worry about the same thing. The forest fires we saw a couple years ago meant that many places that didn't see this before saw days where there was such smoke in the air that it was dangerous for kids. We've seen extreme weather, forest fires, heat domes, floods impacting us. We've got to do everything we can to
Thank you,
protect our
Mr.
future.
Singh. That's time. Mr. Polyev, where does fighting climate change land on your list of priorities when
Hey,
it comes
Super,
to
what's going on? I'm
expanding
doing well,
energy
man. I'm doing well.
opportunities in
Thank
this
you.
country?
It lands within our priorities of bringing home jobs while bringing down emissions around the world. Look, the reality is
All of the guns that they
if
banned are
we
not the ones
push
that are being
production out of
used.
our country to more polluting countries, it actually makes the problem worse. But that has been exactly the Liberal approach with the anti-development law, C-69, blocking of 15 LNG export plants over the last 10 years. We have seen more of those jobs go
Oh,
abroad.
another
I
fellow
wanna
pork
bring
chop.
them
We got a
home.
lot of pork
My
chops here
plan
tonight, man.
will be
I think
to
that's at
approve,
least
for
5
example,
already I've seen
natural
in the
gas,
chat.
liquefaction and export. If we sent our gas to India, for example, to displace half of their demand for electricity, we could reduce emissions by 2.5 billion tons, which is 3 times the total emissions of Canada. That's the way we bring emissions down and jobs up. It's common sense, and now it's time to bring it home.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev. The next question is for Mr. Carney. How would your government fast-track pipelines and mining projects while also following the Supreme Court decision that requires consent of Indigenous communities?
Well, I think the first thing, and this goes back a bit to where we started, which is recognizing that we are in a crisis. We need to act with maximum force, and having a process and a consultation, but a consultation with a purpose, which is to identify those projects, those investments of national interest. that are really going to move the dial in terms of growth.
Common sense
jobs,
is not so common,
energy
Misty, you know?
security, well-being consistent
And
with
yeah,
long-term
super, that's for
competitiveness,
sure.
which necessarily means lower carbon. And so part of that process is ensuring that First Nations, Indigenous peoples, are there from the start. It also includes their ability to participate fully in those projects, and that's why, and I know I can tell, like, you've got to tell on when I've gone on too long, so I'll finish up. Which is, that's why we're doubling.
Yeah, the legal gun owners
to
are all
double
responsible. They
Indigenous
have to
loan guarantee
be,
program to
that's
$10
in order for them to
billion.
get their
What does that
license. They
actually
have to
mean?
prove.
It means an ability for them to invest equity in those
It's all these
projects.
yahoos that are grabbing all
Thank
these
you. My
illegal
tell is my
guns just
clock,
doing
and my clock
the
is at
crime.
0, so that's how it goes. Monsieur Blanchet, do you still oppose pipeline construction in Quebec, even though a majority of Quebecers now apparently say they support it?
We will know about that when we have held the debate about that, which has not begun yet. We are just beginning it. First, we are hearing very creative numbers, and we are being fed nonsense, and we will be back to it.
Hey,
in a
Hollow,
few
what's
minutes,
going
but
on? Glad you could
energy,
join us tonight.
Trade, commerce.
It's been a little bit of a rough
is
stream so
from
far, but
south
I think
to
we're doing all
north
right
or
now.
North to south, and it's true in Quebec also. In a little more than 3 years,
Appreciate you taking the time to
Donald
check
Trump
out
won't be in
the
office,
live stream tonight.
and there will be not one more pipeline having been built once we get there. So let's be serious, responsible, and we will be back with the numbers. We don't want to pay in Quebec for such monstrosities which will provide us with nothing.
We now move to open debate, and you all will
Does
get a chance, or
Blanchet
have had a
not
chance to
realize
get the
that
first shot
the
at this.
U.S.
Monsieur
can cut us
Blanchet, it
off
is
from
your
our
turn to
own
get the
oil
first
supply?
shot. Canada has a substantial supply of critical minerals, which are in high demand.
Like, we
Are
need to
you
get
in
the
favor
pipeline from the west
of
to the
allowing
east.
these minerals to be mined?
Of course, it has to be done properly. Quebec has probably the most important clean phosphate reserves in North America. In Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, it is very important. It has to be exploited. This is the best way to use Paul Saguenay as an infrastructure that we need. We have lithium. Everybody needs
Thanks, Marcel.
lithium.
Appreciate it.
Transportation has
And
to
Hollow,
be
you got to thank my
taken
wife.
from
She actually said she
oil
would take care of the kids
to
tonight so that I could
clean
come down
energy.
and do
This
this.
is
So
what we want to be working on. It is part of the specificities.
normally
specifics
this is bedtime
of
for the
Quebec
kids, you know?
economy. So we are in favor of that, but we don't want to pay for the $30 billion which have been spent on oil and gas by the Liberals last year. It's $7 billion from Quebec. We don't want to pay for the $40 billion which have been spent by the Liberals on Trans Mountain. It's $9 billion from Quebec. Those are $16 billion of which not $1 has been spent in Quebec to develop a lot more power and wealth for Quebecers with
yeah,
our
shout
own
out to
money.
her.
We need to let the leader of the Liberals respond.
Well, actually, I was going to pick up on the enormous opportunity that exists in Quebec, exists in Ontario, exists in the north of Canada, really exists across this great nation in terms of critical metals and minerals. We are have one of the biggest resources in this country. And this
Yeah,
is
but you want to
it's not
leave
just
the
an enormous
resources in
economic
the ground,
opportunity,
bro.
It is a strategic opportunity for Canada.
You've already said like
So we have to
76,
make a decision,
80% of those
not
things
just
have to be
develop
in the
it,
ground.
But how do we develop it, and who are our partners for it? Do we become more dependent on the United States, which is what they want? By the way, President Trump this week said he might put a tax on
Oh, here goes
metals
Trump again.
and minerals. Just
Had to
showing
throw
again,
Trump
yeah,
in there.
If I may, and so the discussions
to
that,
negotiate,
if I may
Let's
finish.
let him finish.
Let me finish. So the opportunity includes in Europe and includes in Asia as our partners. Last point. In order to get it done, we'll put in place a first and last mile fund. So these projects are connected to road and rail so they can go quickly to market. And we will have all of the other fast tracking measures in place that I talked about earlier in terms of capital, timing, approvals, so that we can move quickly, we can be stronger at home, better.
Always with the
Mr.
approval
Singh.
of
Yeah,
Quebec.
I
Mr.
think
Singh has the floor.
about that.
we should absolutely take advantage of the fact that we've got incredible amounts of critical minerals in our country. And the way we do that is with any energy project or any project of this nature, make sure it's got the local community buy-in. It creates good jobs in communities, make sure we are meeting all our environmental needs, and we work with Indigenous partnership. And so I absolutely agree with that. I want to build on something Mr. Blanchet mentioned about the investments that this country has made. What I found very troubling is that the past number of years, the Liberal government record is one where we
Yeah,
spent
Singh
the
shouldn't be
most
talking. He's
subsidies
approved
compared to
almost
any other
everything that the
country in
Liberals have done.
G7
So
on subsidizing oil and gas. These are highly profitable companies.
You
I
voted
think that's
for
the
it.
wrong thing to do. We fought against it again and again.
No, you voted
and then
for
the
it.
Liberals have continued to do it.
Yes.
And so my question really to Mr. Carney is, will you commit to ending oil and gas subsidies? We should be
Oh,
using that
shit.
to invest in people, not
Call 'em
giving
out,
it
baby.
to highly profitable oil and gas companies.
Yeah, we talk.
I promise Mr. Polyev the next, we'll come back and get that question answered. Mr. Polyev.
Well, Mr. Carney, you point out that Donald Trump has a wrong-headed idea of putting a tax on our mines and our industry, and that is wrong. But so do you. You want to apply a massive industrial carbon tax on Canadian mines, Canadian steel mills, Canadian aluminum plants,
You want to let them just pollute as
Canadian
much as they
oil
want?
and gas. And your idea is to double the tax that Trump is applying
Corner
by
gas,
hitting them
yeah.
a second
That
time.
was a good show.
This will do nothing for the environment. It will actually ship our jobs south of the border.
Yep, I
just
can,
His plan
Candy.
is let
Hold
them
up.
pollute as much as they
President
want.
Trump
Not a good plan.
wants. My plan is to bring that production
Is that
home
better,
here
Candy?
to Canada. For example, I will give a tax credit to low-emitting Canadian industry like Quebec's aluminum, for example, or British Columbia's natural gas, so that we not only bring home the production, but we do it below global average levels of emissions,
You
so that
translate
we
that.
actually help the environment while bringing
wants to
home
let
the
big
jobs
polluters
for our
pollute
people
we have to-
We have to let him
at the
finish.
same time. That is a sensible, pragmatic approach that puts us in charge of our economic destiny so we can stand up to the Americans from a position of strength for a change.
yeah, Mike, we do have so many
Hang on,
resources. It's insane.
I want to give
how
give
poor
you a
we
chance
are
to
as a
speak to
country
Mr.
because they
Singh's
haven't done
criticism
anything.
about oil and gas subsidies and Mr. Polyev's criticism about the industrial carbon tax.
Okay, I'm going to make 3 points. I'll make 4 if you want me to respond to that, but I want to make 3. The first is that I answered this question
This
last
guy
night. but
takes
I
up
think the
so
puck
much
already dropped
airtime
in the
with his
Canadiens game, so not everyone
preambles.
heard it.
It's ridiculous.
Yes, end oil and gas subsidies. That's
That's why you need New Democrats. We'll make it
Secondly, I would have done it independently. Secondly, recognizing that the biggest component of that was the cost of building Keystone. Keystone, which is the pipeline which has helped to increase oil and gas oil exports rather by 50% in this country, that is an asset of the people of Canada. We own it. And the question of what to do it. So it's not a subsidy that has disappeared, it's actually an asset of Canada. Let me make a third point, though, in terms of where the oil and gas industry, particularly the
Hey,
oil
Sarah,
industry,
what's going on?
wants
Thanks
to
for
and
tuning
needs
in
to go,
tonight.
which is to become low carbon in the production and transportation of oil. One of the big projects we need to move forward with is carbon capture and storage, the Pathways project, so that we have oil and gas that is competitive, not just today, 10 years from now and 20 years from now, as the world uses less.
I like
we want
that
to have
name.
more market share. We need to do
Mr.
that.
Carney, by very
And my government will move that.
But by definition, a subsidy isn't when we buy a pipeline. I'm talking about subsidies that go to oil and gas companies.
well-
Independent, separate from the country, oil and gas companies. That's what I'm
The
talking
figure
about.
you quoted last night included the cost of the pipeline.
Do you want to
There's
address
billions
his
of
point?
dollars we're spending. We got to stop spending.
Sorry, can we get you to address his point about the industrial carbon tax?
How much will the industrial carbon tax add to the price of a car?
So the first thing I want to say is I'm going to address the broader point.
Well, when he was with Rosemary Barton, he said it would add
$2,000.
$2,000. Let's see if his answer
by the way,
changes here.
is going to put our industry and our country at a disadvantage as we're looking for new trading partners. Guess what? Most people want to deepen our partnership in Europe, in Asia. Those countries care about whether or not you've made progress. Second thing is, we're designing a program so that the big
They're
polluters
allowing him
pay
too much
Canadians
time to
at
talk.
home
They need
for
to start
making
cutting into his talking
responsible
time.
climate choices, for retrofitting their home, getting their emissions down, or improving otherwise. And that is smart climate policy. It's better for the big polluters, and it's better for Canadians.
Pierre Polyev.
Mr. Carney didn't answer my question. I asked how much would an industrial carbon tax on Canadian steel add to the price of a car? And he won't answer because he knows that it will be very expensive because there's lots of steel in cars. Now, while Mr. Carney has temporarily
But do you know the answer?
Hidden the
You don't know the
carbon
answer
tax
either.
is-
You're just
it's
throwing out random
thousands of
Just
dollars
making it up, though. You don't
extra
know.
costs.
Actually, I do know the answer to that question.
Drag meat,
When you
man.
add taxes to steel, you raise the price of everything that uses steel. When you add everything, taxes
straw man argument to say,
to
do you know
the
the price?
when
You
you
don't know the
add
price.
when
You
you
don't know the
add
answer.
when
here
you
to learn.
add
He's here to
the
learn.
carbon tax onto the price of, for example, fertilizer, you increase the
Yes,
price of
sir.
food.
I
So
was
while
able to
Mr.
live
Carney
stream
has
'cause my wife is
temporarily hidden
putting the kids
liberal
down,
carbon
which was
tax
very
at the
sweet of
pumps
her.
while keeping the tax fully in law and planning to raise it after the election. He's also going after a tax on our industry that will ultimately be passed on to you. After a
still
lost
turned them
liberal
up?
decade
Wow,
of
okay.
rising costs, we cannot afford a fourth liberal term. We need a new government that will fully
How's that,
axe the
Darren?
carbon
Is that
tax,
better?
increase the jobs that we have here in Canada, and bring down your cost of living.
We got just a little over 3 minutes left in this segment. So, Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, do you think climate change is still a priority from Canadians? You're out there. What are you hearing?
Darren, is that
Absolutely.
better?
You speak to any young person, and they think, we're seeing climate crisis in front of us happening right now. You speak to seniors who say, we used to be able to live in our homes without air conditioning, and now we're seeing heat crises in communities that never had worries about extreme weather. We're seeing flooding, we're seeing forest fires like never before. We are living in a climate crisis. So Canadians are absolutely worried
Yes,
about
Crystal.
it. As soon as we come into a summer, we start seeing those forest fires again.
Air for
it's
PM,
top
baby.
of mind for Canadians because they're living it, they're seeing it. And I want those Canadians to know.
Folks, hit the
Mr.
like
Carney's
button if
not
you
gonna
can.
end those fossil
I'd
fuel
appreciate it.
subsidies
This is the
unless
first time we're
they are
live
to fight
streaming. We
back.
might do it a
Mr.
few more
Poilievre
times
wants to let
after
big
this,
polluters
depending
pollute
on
as much as they want.
how things
Poison
go.
our beautiful land, our water,
not true.
and air. He wants to let them dump
he's
into
never
our
said
oceans.
that.
I'm going to fight back and defend our environment.
Monsieur Blanchet, on the issue of whether or not people still care about climate change.
I think people should be kept very informed about climate change because we are in a very strange denial situation about climate change, which still exists and is very expensive.
I agree with you,
And
Noof.
I'm sorry to crash your party, guys, but you are telling fairy tales. Clean oil and gas is a fairy tale. Large-scale carbon sequestration, I'm French, is a fairy tale. It does not exist. If Alberta wanted to
We don't need to
exploit oil and
sequester
gas and it
carbon.
were not a
Trees
matter of
and plants
pollution,
already
I
do
wouldn't
that
mind
for
at
us.
all. That's their business. Our own powerhouse in terms of energy in Quebec is clean energy. We are the best place in the world to achieve that. Our market is the northeastern part, Democrat part of United States. We want to keep our money to create wealth in Quebec
I don't know, Super.
for Quebecers.
Let me
Let
give
us
Mr.
be different because we can afford
Monsieur
to be
Blanchet,
different.
let me give. I will get to you because I said I would. But you've taken a couple of hits here, and I want to give you a chance to respond to some of the things the people on this side of the stage have said.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we do support protecting the environment. We want to ban the dumping of raw sewage into our waters. We want to hold large corporations to high environmental standards to protect our water and air. But we cannot do that by raising taxes and sending jobs overseas, as Mr. Carney is proposing to do. That has been the approach of the last 10 years of the Liberal government.
We are
What the biggest
insignificant. It doesn't make any sense that we
develop our
are
resources say
have a carbon
is that we
tax.
need to repeal the Liberal anti-development law C-69. A law Mr. Carney wants
Sir,
to
that
keep
would
in
be
place.
fun,
They
but
say we need to
my wife
repeal
would
the
never want to be
industrial
on
carbon
camera,
tax
unfortunately.
and get rid of the Liberal energy cap. We need 6 months approvals in order to take back
Mr. and Mrs.
energy
Fringe look like they have
security
fun,
and
though.
energy
We
sovereignty.
can summarize that. He
Mr.
wants to let them pollute as much as
Mr.
possible.
Carney, hang on.
sovereign
Last
and
word to Mr.
independent
Carney in
for
this
change.
segment, please.
Thank you very much. You know, I was born in Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories, just north of what the oil sands became.
Oh, gosh.
When I was born and when I was growing up in Edmonton, early days, it was a fairy tale, quote unquote. But you know what happened? Canadian ingenuity, Canadian engineers, Canadian governments, both the federal government and the Alberta government got together and converted this.
The worst pollution
If I
in
may,
the world.
if I may,
The worst
may I
pollution
finish?
in the
May I
world.
finish? May I
Give 10 more seconds to finish, please. Let him finish his point.
That's the opportunity we have. That's the opportunity we have in carbon capture. That's the opportunity we have in small modular reactors. That's the opportunity we have in hydrogen beyond. This country can be a clean energy superpower. My government will help deliver it.
And that is time for this segment. Gentlemen, let us go
Look how
to
much
our
time
final
Carney's
theme, which
already
is called
talked.
Leading in a Crisis.
Keep Canadians know how to weather a storm. Canadians know how to get through a difficult time.
If, at the end of the day, we end up with the balance of power, Quebec is safer than it could be in any other scenario.
Now is not a time for weakness. Now is the time to take back
Exactly,
control.
Nuke. That's a
Canadians
perfect
are
point.
always ready when someone else drops the gloves.
And Mike, yeah, the global
Leading in
warming
a
thing or
crisis is a
the
pretty
global
broad theme that
crisis
allows
has
us
been
to
going on
explore
since I
many
can
different
remember.
avenues here. So let's get to it. Mr. Carney, you get the first
I
question.
mean, think
this
of
time.
Al Gore, right?
We
Al
haven't
Gore's whole
balanced the
thing was
budget
about
in this country in 17 years,
climate
and 10
climate
of those
change and
years were
everything
under
like
your
that.
party. You have pledged to get us to a balanced budget in 3 years. Question is, how?
So let me put this in the context of leading in a crisis, which is in a crisis, you got to plan for the worst. Worst is that the U.S. actually
That's all
does
he's
want to
gonna
take
say.
us over. Secondly, you got to have a plan.
And now Trump is going to be the
plan
next
build, and that'll
crisis.
include a fiscal plan, and I will get to that in a second. The third thing is you need to respond in a crisis with overwhelming force. You need to think big. You need to move rapidly. The things we've been discussing today are a subset of what we can and should do as a nation, and we can deliver. And government can play a role, but its role has to be catalytic. And so our approach is that we will slow the rate of spending. It's been growing at 9% a year, operational spending.
Yeah, thanks to
program
you guys,
spending,
the
away
Liberals,
from transfers, away from transfers.
who you've been
9% a year.
advising.
We'll slow that to 2%. We will focus on a small amount of capital spending by the federal government in order to drive enormous private investment
like
up
that,
to
Mike. Good one.
$500 billion by 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Ukraine surely constitutes a crisis. Leading in a time of
Why are we
crisis.
talking about
Mr. Poilievre, question
Ukraine?
for you. If the United States withholds support from Ukraine going forward, do you believe Canada should commit more to assist?
I believe we should continue to support Ukraine. Our party supported donating missiles that the Canadian military was decommissioning. We supported funds and other armaments to back the Ukrainians in the defense of their sovereignty. We also need to rebuild our own Canadian military because the Russians
Sir, he has
want
actually
to
been
make
throwing a few
incursions into
ums
our
and
waters.
ahs, but I see
We'll
whenever
be
he has like
buying
a prepared
4
thing,
massive
he's pretty
Arctic
good. When it's on the
icebreakers.
fly,
I'll be
that's when
opening
he
the first
says a lot of
Arctic
that stuff.
base since the Cold War in Canada, CFB Iqaluit. We're going to double the size of the Arctic Rangers and fill the vacancies in our Canadian armed forces. We need a change to rebuild our military,
What's up,
which has been
BC?
so disintegrated under.
Yeah, we've
the
started to
cuts
notice. I
and
should
the
have put like a
mismanagement
crisis or a
of the
Trump
last 10 years. But
counter
we can have
every
a
time
change
you said
because
it.
we have the best soldiers, sailors, and airmen in the world, and they will have full backing from my government if you give me the honor of becoming Prime Minister.
I may come back to that one in the open forum because I'm not sure we got an answer about Ukraine on that one, but okay.
Well,
going on. Monsieur Blanchet.
the answer was yes.
We'll get more details, perhaps, as we go forward. Monsieur Blanchet, given the U.S. trade war, should any talk of a referendum on Quebec independence be put on pause?
That one is easy. It will happen only after the negotiation is over, and that's a good thing. I want to say I support the idea. We must help Ukraine, but we also must help the civilians of Gaza, and we must destroy Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. You know what? I don't
know why
want
we're
to
giving
be
so
the
much
leader of
money
Canada.
out.
You will understand that. I don't want to be Prime Minister. But I can offer to be a partner, a responsible partner, a collaborative partner.
Again, this guy just admitted he
If
doesn't want to be
Quebec
Prime
is
Minister.
respected
What
in
is he
its
doing at the
differences,
leadership debates?
in its aluminum industry and lumberwood industry and culture and French language and values of secularity of the state, which is the price to be paid in order to have real equality. Then, if we are respected, we will be a partner, and then even Canada will be stronger in its negotiation against Donald Trump. This is what I am offering. Respect us.
Mr. Singh, I watched last night's debate. You seemed very eager to talk about health care, so let's talk a little more health care right now. You have made many promises on health care. If a province says to you, we'll take your money for health care, but not your conditions on how to spend it, what do?
We've got to negotiate. We can't be giving away money without clear conditions. We're in a healthcare crisis right now, and a crisis that is hurting people across this country. People are waiting desperately in line in emergency rooms for hours and hours. Seniors are waiting for years and years to get the care that they need for surgeries that would remove pain or help them deal with mobility issues. We're in a serious crisis. Healthcare workers are burnt out.
I know what it doesn't make any sense.
And what we're seeing is more
This guy
and more
only thinks about
privatization,
Quebec, and that's
that
it.
is hurting our public universal healthcare system. So we've got to fight back against it. We cannot allow our public money to go to a for-profit private clinic lining the pockets of a rich CEO or investors instead of going towards care. We need to make sure that we are investing in solutions where care gets to people, not profiting those at the very top. And so that's my commitment. I'm going to fight to make sure we defend our healthcare against the threats of Americanization and privatization.
Okay, we now go to open forum debate, and perhaps
Hey,
Mr.
shout out
Poilievre,
to
you get
Evan
the
and
first
Derek.
word here. This
Crazy
might be a
Noof.
good time to put a little more
Appreciate you
flesh
being
on the
here
bone of
tonight.
what you think Canada could do for
Super
Ukraine
no, my
as
wife
the
is
US
not
backs out.
Portuguese.
Yes, and my answer is that we should continue to support Ukraine. We don't need to follow the Americans in everything they do. When they're wrong, then we will stand on our own and with other allies.
I hope your dog gets better,
And,
Sarah.
With respect to Ukraine,
What's,
that
what's up with
course
it?
includes support with intelligence, equipment, armaments, but it also
My
includes
wife,
defunding
she's a
Putin.
bit of a mutt.
Right
She's
now,
got like
Vladimir Putin has a
Scottish,
monopoly on the
Irish,
European energy market
French,
because,
Canadian.
frankly, the Liberals blocked
You know,
exports of Canadian
just a bunch of
natural
random
gas
stuff.
off the Atlantic coast.
She
They
likes to
blocked
think she's
multiple
Portuguese, though.
projects. I would rapidly approve those projects on national security grounds so that we can actually ship Canadian natural gas over to Europe, break European dependence on Putin.
Yeah, caker, exactly. Yeah, I
defund
should have
the
just
war,
said that.
and turn dollars
Yeah,
from
she's a
dictators
caker, big time.
back into paychecks for our people.
Mr. Carney, you wanted to add.
Well, I want to go to the situation in Ukraine because it's very important. We've been a steadfast, Canada has been a steadfast ally, and Canadians have
Oh,
stepped
you got a
up,
mungie cake,
welcoming
eh?
Ukrainians
Very
into their
nice.
homes and supporting them in other ways. You know, in my first month as Prime Minister, we joined the coalition of the willing to support Ukraine as the U.S. stepped back. So led by France, the United Kingdom, with Ukraine, number European nations, Australia, ourselves, New Zealand. That's an example of how the new world is going to be. Canada participating in these areas and helping. It also means open trade. Mr. Poilievre voted against free trade agreement with Ukraine.
Oh, a WAP,
It means
My
aid for
brother's,
Ukraine. Mr.
my sister-in-law's
Poilievre
a
wants to
WAP.
cut
My brother
foreign
married a
aid,
WAP.
including for Ukraine, or not. He didn't mention support for aid for Ukraine. We
Shuddies?
have to
Of course I
stand by
like
them.
shuddies.
We have to be there, and this government has been.
Mr. Singh.
New Democrats absolutely support standing with Ukraine and will continue to do that. But I appreciate the opportunity in talking about leadership.
Unfortunately, my
crisis,
daughter,
talk
she
about
can't
many of the
handle
crises we're up
spice.
against.
So
And one of the crises
whenever
we're
we
up against
have
in our country,
COVID or anything
with
like
the
that,
threat
she
of
never.
Donald Trump,
We have to
with the
take the
threat of the
shuddies
trade
out.
war, and with the privatization and Americanization of our healthcare system is the healthcare system. And what we have learned today, you know, Mr.
yeah,
Carney
not
mentioned
that- not that
slowing
you're good.
operation spending. That's a cut to services. He said his plan. He has a plan to balance the operating budget within 3 years. That's going to require massive cuts to spending. We calculated that at $43 billion.
To the
in
non-pork
cuts.
traps here,
In
sorry,
fact,
we're talking about
Rosemary
food
Barton,
right
when
now.
he was on the show on February 16th, he said he would cut spending. He said it would be in operations. He defined it as transfers in health. And finally, longtime Liberal and former House Leader Karina Gould said that Mr. Carney's plans would mean massive cuts. That's the only way to achieve it. So, Mr. Carney, do you think it is leadership to cut health care at a time when it is in crisis? I think it is wrong. We can't do that.
We will not cut transfers for healthcare. We will not.
Barb,
cut
you have a very
healthcare
good
spending,
point. They
full
have been
stop.
kind of
But listen,
eyeing
if
each
I-
other
if I may-
tonight.
Who do we believe, Mr. Carney today, or the one he spoke at on Rosemary Barton's show on February 16th?
I did not.
The one that repeated
I
again
have-
that he would cut spending.
If I may.
Who do we believe?
If I may, consistently said we'll preserve all transfers to the provinces, including the
Portuguese
increases.
victories.
We will preserve all the transfers to individuals, I won't detail them all, but they're. So we're looking at addressing an operational spend, which is about $150 billion.
Yeah, Evan and Derek,
we will
boys.
address that. We will make it more efficient.
Thanks
and
for
we will
tuning
do it
in. I
3 years.
appreciate
We'll
it.
balance that budget.
Mr. Blanchet.
I am 6 minutes behind Mr. Carney, so I will speak a little bit longer. First,
Oh, yeah.
I will support any initiative which will bring Canada aligned with Europe and NATO in order to be stronger and facing new threats.
Good.
I believe that 2% won't be enough.
My
I'm
dad's
not
from the
more in
Azores, my
favor
mom's from the
of
mainland,
war
so
than
half and
anybody
half.
else. But we have responsibilities, and our main ally is removing himself from the stage. So we have to step up. We have to do our part. I want to go somewhere else entirely, however. I want to ask Mr. Carney,
Yes,
if
thank you to
we're
Jesus
speaking about
Christ.
leadership
We have the
here,
long Easter weekend,
if
you know.
Quebec
No meat on
and
Friday,
Canada
guys.
were to say, you are not being given a majority government. There will be more conservatives than you would like, maybe
Oh,
more
Madeira, wow.
New Democrats than you would like, and
I don't
more
think I know many people
the
from
bloc than
Madeira.
you would like. Will you accept, because you don't seem to be very eager about that, to deal with people which basically are more experienced than you are, as legitimate as you are, and would be more representative altogether than you would be being alone in your little kingdom? And I want also to
Yeah, you gotta
propose to
admit,
you
Blanchet
all
is pretty
guys that
funny, though.
1 week after
Regardless
the election,
of
1 week
how
after
good
the
he is
election,
here.
we all meet, whatever the result.
My
and we
dad's from
start
San
dealing
Miguel.
with this crisis together, because this is what people, either they are from Alberta or Quebec or wherever, this is what people expect from us.
Mr. Carney, is that something you could get behind?
I look forward to meeting with everyone. You're welcome to come, Steve, if you'd like. Week after crisis, but
That's
also,
not
but in
very-
all
that's
seriousness,
not very respectful.
No, but I'll
That's
come.
not very
but
respectful.
I'm coming. On peut jaser un peu. Okay, I come to the core.
On jase.
Yeah, okay. I'll come to the core. Look, in a crisis, yes, you need a team.
Ooh,
and you need to
Fayal,
bring,
wow. I don't know many
the
people from
country along
Fayal
with
either.
you. So what I did in the first week was
Fayal,
to bring the premiers together, meet with all the Indigenous leaders, and move forward in that context. Now the question is, who's going to lead out of this? Whoever leads out of this, if I may, Mr. Blanchet.
Yeah, Blanchet is quite funny.
Thank you. Whoever's going to lead out of this is going to need to work with all the provinces, work with Labour, work with Indigenous leaders, work with all Canadians to bring them forward in a united
I'm
front.
from Fayal, born in Seda.
Make this last point.
Living in Timmins,
One of
wow.
the things that has happened, which is a credit
You're going
to
all
those
over,
people
eh?
at home, is that Canadians are coming together. And it's our responsibility to meet the strength of Canadian unity.
Still lagging. I have one small point to make.
Yep.
You will be elected, if you are elected, in the parliament where there are other leaders. I don't know if he called you, or Mr. Poilievre, I don't know if he called you, but before yesterday, you have not spoken to me once, even if I proposed it so many times. But you say, I speak to provinces' leaders. You're not elected in provinces. You are in a parliament where people are to make decisions which might not always suit you. But this is democracy, which you don't know too much about.
I'm going to jump in here because I'm noticing what the clock is saying, and you brought up Gaza earlier, and I think our audience would be interested in hearing your views
sir,
on
that's
the
pretty
other
rough
major
for
international
the dog.
crisis facing the
I just
world.
want to get
man.
this, before we get there,
He's a
just to
stone
finish up with
brain.
healthcare. I just want to speak to healthcare workers right
But
now.
that is a cool
who are
mix,
deeply
Spanish,
worried
Finnish,
about the
East
status
African,
of our
and
healthcare
East
system.
Indian.
To Canadians who believe and love our universal
Yeah,
public
the food
healthcare
would be
system, to
nice.
patients who are stressed out. If you're worried about which Mr. Carney to believe, the one today or the one who spoke on Freebie shows and said he would
Mr.
cut,
Singh, I
vote for
think-
New Democrats, and we will fight to defend our
I
healthcare.
think your
we will never
supporters
let
would really
anyone
like
cut
to
it.
hear what you have to say about this question, and we have less than 5 minutes for it here. What role should Canada play in the other major international crisis in this world,
Dude,
in the Middle East
we
and the war in Gaza?
gotta
Pierre
stop
Poilievre,
with
would you
the
start us off
crises
on that?
around the
What
world.
role
We are
can
in a
Canada
crisis
play?
here in Canada.
Well,
Deal
first
with
of all,
Canada.
we must condemn Hamas, and more importantly, the terror sponsors in Tehran who initiated the attacks, the horrific attacks of October 7th. We need to defeat the terrorists so that all the
I mean, I
peoples of the world
understand
can
they're
live
just
in
playing
peace
to these different
and
groups so
defend
that they can get the
right
votes,
of, yes,
but-
Palestinians to have their own lives free from the oppression of Hamas dictators and Iranian intervention, while Israel has the ability to live in freedom and peace. But I also want to say we need to get back to the Canadian tradition, which is that when people come to this country, they leave foreign conflicts behind. The rampaging riots targeting Jewish communities is utterly
I think Pierre's going to win
unacceptable, and it
viral, but if
points to the
people just
growing
listen to the
chaos that
polls
we
like
see
they've
on
been
our
being
streets
fed on the mainstream
10
media,
years of
it might just be a liberal
irresponsible
win,
liberal policies
unfortunately.
of weak borders, of dividing people into groups, of saying one thing to one group and the opposite to another, dividing and conquering. We must end that division and unite our people so that everyone feels safe, and that when we come here, We put
Pierre
our
has to
foreign
be. Everybody
conflicts
keeps
behind,
comparing him to
and we
Trump
put
because
That's
he's
not it. People
aggressive.
Mr.
You
Singh,
know?
come
please,
from
go
countries
ahead.
from around the world, and they care deeply about where they come from, and they should be able to do so. That's a part of being in our country, to have that freedom. Your treatment of Palestinians has been frankly disgusting. Your treatment of people who provide care and service for people in Gaza has been disgusting. On top of that, people in Israel and in Palestine deserve to live in peace and security. And Mr. Carney, to date, you've not acknowledged that what's going on in Gaza is now clearly become a genocide. It's important to call things out as they are, and you've not done that.
Mr. Carney.
We need to work, to go to your question, we need to work with our international partners, maximum pressure, maximum encouragement for an immediate ceasefire. That's the first thing. Encourage the return of all of the hostages. Resumption of humanitarian aid. My government put in place $100 million of humanitarian aid, which is ready to go. With respect to where this ultimately goes, yes, two-state solution, but it has to be a viable and
I know,
free
Tosol. I have to keep talking to
Palestinian
my
state,
mom about this
living
whole stuff.
side
She
by
keeps saying,
side in peace
"Oh, I
and
heard
security
Pierre's going to do
with the
this,
state
or
of
I heard
Israel."
Pierre's going
I
to
will
do this
underscore
about
one other thing.
abortion or about this." I'm
Mr.
like, "No,
Poilievre
Mom.
rightly
He's already
mentioned
said he's
Iran.
not doing anything about
The Iranian
abortion. He's
sponsors
not
in this
cutting
region,
this.
we
He's
have
not
to be
cutting that." But this
clear-eyed
is just the
about the
constant feed
fundamental
that they
risks,
keep getting
of
fed,
Iran, and do everything with
especially
our
the older
international
people.
partners to check it and turn it.
Mr. Blanchet.
If we are to work together, we will have to be consistent. The Jewish community in Quebec and Canada is harassed by a very little minority.
You're lucky, Mike. I definitely need to
radical
start speaking a little bit
Islamists.
more Portuguese. I feel like I'm starting to lose
we
it.
don't do so, we don't
Where I
do
live,
so
there's
much.
not
The law
that many
in
Portuguese
Canada
people
says
around.
that somebody may invite people,
Especially with my kids. I want to teach them
propose
more and more.
genocide against another people if they can be hidden behind a religious motivation. They are in agreement with that. They are in agreement with that. They are in agreement with that. And we say it is a crime to invite people to violence and killing other people. And this is what is being done very often in Canada
Agree,
and Quebec
super.
with
Yeah,
the approval
TA,
of the criminal code
Moose on the
of
Loose,
Canada.
David
And
did a
we are
great
saying
video on that,
this
breaking
has to
that all
be
down.
changed. We have to change what we do before we want people elsewhere to change what they do.
Last minute in this segment, Mr. Poilievre.
This is about crises and leadership.
That's awesome to hear, Sarah.
And one crisis
Let's
we
keep
have
the
is in
languages working
immigration.
on this.
Because of this Liberal government's
Wow, nice,
commitment
Super.
to a radical policy.
I should have been better
century
at French.
initiative,
In
which
school, I
seeks to
dropped it as
bring
soon
our
as I got to
population
grade
up
9. I
100
said,
million
forget
people.
this.
They have allowed massive overcrowding in our communities. That has caused housing shortages, job
Don't
shortages,
blame immigration
and
for
healthcare
the fault
shortages.
of your government.
And if I could,
the fact that you did
sorry,
not
I didn't
invest in
interrupt
housing,
you. I did
built
not
6
interrupt you,
homes.
sir. I did
That's
not
wrong.
interrupt you.
Don't
It is-
blame
I do not
people.
blame.
Your
if I
failures.
could,
Let him finish.
Oh my
I
God,
do not
Singh
blame
needs to shut
immigrants.
the
I
hell
blame the
up.
Liberal government, which brought this policy on.
Crystal,
And
10
Mr.
pages
Carney
on
wants to
what? On
continue
why
with
she's
the
like
Century
voting
Initiative.
liberal?
This is crazy.
Or
We
not
have to get back
conservative,
to
maybe?
normal levels of immigration. Get rid of the fraud in the temporary
Hey,
immigration system.
got CYB
and
here.
ensure
What's
that
going
the
on,
people who
man?
come here can be
Thanks for tuning in
arrive
tonight.
numbers that we can house, employ, and care for. That's how it always was, and that's how we're going to restore
Thank
it.
you, Mr. Poilievre. That is our time for this segment. Those are our 5 themes, but we are not done yet. We are entering the next section of our debate tonight, what we're calling the leader's choice, something a little bit different. Each of you will get the chance to ask a
Defending
question,
Brampton.
any question of any other leader. You can then debate the answer, and each one on one will last for 3 minutes. So, Mr. Singh, you have the first option here. Who do you want to ask your question of?
Mr. Carney.
Go for it.
Mr. Carney, as chair of Brookfield Investments, your company is one of the biggest tax dodgers in Canada. As chair, you approved decisions where Brookfield Investments bought up affordable homes,
Holy moly.
kicked out the tenants, and jacked up the rates.
Crystal,
As
is
Prime
each
Minister,
page
one of the
like
first things you did was a tax
how they
cut
failed
that
each
helped
year
out
or how
mostly
good they've done?
millionaires. And
Because
you
it's
have
been
a plan
10
to cut
long years of
services
failure, so.
for people.
Super, I got
expect
2
that of
kids,
Mr. Pierre
a girl
Poilievre
and a boy.
and the Conservatives. That's very much a conservative plan. But my concern is that doesn't sound like what people want for a Liberal leader.
It's all
my
good,
question to you
CYB.
is,
You
Mr.
haven't
Carney,
really
whose
missed much,
side
to
are
be
you
honest.
really on?
The stream's been a little bit rough.
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Singh. I'm on the side of Canadians. I'm in this for Canadians. I work for Canadians.
But your track record doesn't show that, though.
No, I have a track record of public service for this country. Go back to something Mr. Blanchet referenced earlier, which is have I resolved any crises? We're in Quebec. If you ask anyone in the finance industry, if you ask anyone in government in Quebec in 2008, they'll know that I resolved the biggest crisis
We'll do that.
in Quebec. Yeah.
You won't have fun.
On y va. Good. But
60 million
but
of
may
dollars.
I- but I'm
This
in
is for these
fairness
two only.
with Mr.
This is for
Singh.
these two.
Mr. Singh. Yes, I have had a long career in the private sector. I'm proud of that career.
I
I've
think
always
all the
acted,
questions are going to be
with
probably
integrity.
targeted to
And
Carney.
it brings me with experience that I can apply
But no one's
in this
questioning your
moment,
integrity,
in moment
sir.
of crisis.
And you certainly have served the country. But the problem is who have you served? You've served to benefit those at the very top. You jacked up the price of homes for people living in affordable homes as a strategic decision. You dodged taxes. And then your decisions as Prime Minister show you're not prioritizing people, but you're prioritizing big business, billionaires.
So the what have we
He solved
done,
the 2008
as a government
crisis,
directly?
Crystal.
We've gone directly to workers using
did it
all
all
of our
by
proceeds
himself.
From,
Exactly,
the
Ursa,
tariffs,
yeah.
committing all of them for workers, the workers most affected in
the
industries.
employment insurance isn't high
unlike
enough.
others, unlike others who
But the amount,
plan
let's
to
talk
use
about
them,
the amount.
use them to cut taxes. We are
The amount
focused
of
on.
the EI is not high enough, though. You have to accept that. Right now, it's
There
only
will
covering-
be additional programs. I am fully confident that the next government, whatever government is formed, or certainly if I'm in the next government, we will make additional programs.
But you didn't do that
for
so
those
far,
workers.
though.
Well, I can't.
You could have.
Couldn't. Well, you couldn't, given that we're in an election
increased- you
process.
could have increased the amount, though.
May I make a core point here, if I may, which is that when you think about workers here today and people watching at home, particularly younger people, there is an enormous opportunity in the trades, in the skilled trades. We are going to build this country in a way that has not been seen before. We are literally talking about hundreds of thousands, not jobs, but careers
But I
in
think
the
people
trade.
are worried, Mr.
And
Carney,
that's
that-
why we're investing in apprenticeships and mid-career
But I think people are worried, Mr. Carney, if New Democrats aren't there to force Liberals to make sure they remember about people they will forget.
Gentlemen, that is time. Thank you for
Oh
that.
my
Mr.
God,
Blanchet,
the
you
new
have the next
Democrats
question.
didn't
To whom
force
would
them
you
to
like
do
put it?
nothing.
Mr. Carney, you avoided quite, I would say, skillfully the questions of Mr. Singh. But first, let me correct something. In 2008, not so much by your decision.
Oh, here we go. Come on,
Billions
Blanchet.
of dollars were given
Do something
to
good.
car industry in Ontario, while 60 millions, not billions of dollars, were lent to lumberwood throughout the whole of Canada. I don't believe that's the right way to manage a crisis, since you did not recoup the money from the car industry. Then, you have been the manager of Brookfield. It's supposed to be a green investment fund, but we now know that 50% of the investments of Brookfield is in fossil fuel. It's not so green. You seem to want to support oil and gas industry. That's interesting. You want to support prefab housing, and it's also in the investments of Brookfield, but not in Canada. You want to support nuclear power, smaller reactors, which are more dangerous, by the way, and Brookfield has investments in Westinghouse. You have hidden the money of Brookfield in Bermuda and Cayman Island, $30 billion. Billions of dollars lost for Canada.
Mr.
You
Blanchet,
are
you gotta give
having
him
your
some time to answer.
taxes being paid by families, workers, elders in Canada and Quebec.
He's building
instead
up
of
this
paying your
question
own
way
taxes.
too long.
So
He's
I
actually,
want to know,
like-
will you, before the election, reveal all the details of your assets, as Mr. Singh has done, as Mr. Poiliev has done, and as I have done? We have a right
Okay,
to
let's
know
let him answer.
under those circumstances.
What's going on, Mary Kay?
Well, the first thing is I want to say a word about. I'll say a word about Brookfield. You know, this is a Canadian success story. It is the largest infrastructure investor and developer in the world. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, developer of renewable power in the world. And who benefits from that? That's Canadian pensioners. That's Quebec pensioners. That is teachers. That is firefighters. It is a series of people, including individuals on this stage, benefit from that. Now, always acted with integrity, served the shareholders of Brookfield when I was there. I have left that I have followed all the rules well in advance.
So
I have followed all the rules well in advance.
Let's reveal your assets like we all did.
And working for the people of Canada.
What do you own? Why don't you tell
gentlemen.
Canadians and
That is
Quebecers
time.
what you own?
Monsieur Blanchet, we're moving on to Mr. Polyev now.
All
who
right,
has his
here we go,
opportunity
boys.
to ask the question of
Ladies
whomever
and
he'd
gentlemen.
like here, and that will be.
Mr. Carney.
Of course.
If I could begin by setting the stage. The choice in this election is, after a lost Liberal decade of rising cost and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb, do we want to elect them to a 4th term? Or do we want to change? Change so that you can afford food and homes. Change so that you can be safe on your street, and change so that your paycheck grows faster than your cost of living. Change with a new Conservative government. Because Mr. Carney has not changed. Mr. Carney, in 2020, it was recorded, you began advising Justin Trudeau. It's on the Liberal Party website today that you are Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. They might want to update your website on that. On June 3rd of 2021, you said that inflation would be a sign of economic progress. And you advised governments, including Justin Trudeau's, your Liberal government, to print money, which led to the worst inflation crisis in a generation. Now, that means that mothers went to bed with empty fridges and empty bank accounts, worried how they'd feed their kids, that seniors worried they'd be evicted from their homes, that young people believed they'd never be able to own a home in the first place. Now, in retrospect, that you look back on the Liberal decisions that you advised Justin Trudeau to take, will you look at the camera in the eye and apologize to the many people who suffered as a result of the inflationary policies that you advised Justin Trudeau to implement?
You know, I said earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Are you denying you were his
here.
economic advisor?
I did not provide any of that advice. I did not provide any of that advice.
It's on the Liberal Party website.
I'm sorry.
Are you accusing your Liberal Party of lying about your role? Because it says today you can go to the Liberal Party website now, and it says that you were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor.
The way you judge someone, in my view, is how they act, what they do when they have responsibility. Twice I was a central bank governor. And in both cases, if I may, in both cases when I was responsible for inflation, inflation was less than 2%. I'll add that when I was here responsible for the Bank of Canada, inflation was less than 2%. Our dollar was at parity. That is the kind of success that I can deliver for this country coming out of this crisis. And what is at stake here?
You were the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau that gave us the worst inflation that we have had in a generation, because the policies that you implemented and those of the MPs that are still in your ministry.
To the
fellow Canadians,
crisis which
the last 10 years has been about the Liberals. The next 10 years should be about you.
And that's time. Mr. Carney, the good news is the next question is yours.
Well, I'm going to ask myself a question. Actually, I'm going to ask a question which has been troubling me. And it's troubling me because, you know, we are in a very dangerous and divided world.
Who is it to?
I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Polyev. Why not? We're in a dangerous and divided world. We talked earlier about the challenges in the Middle East, the threats from Iran, threats from Russia, Russia's aggression in Ukraine. We have the threats from China, which I raised. We have the United States, which is fundamentally changing its security relationships, its commercial relationships. We have all this. And in the context of that, everyone on this stage, Mr. Blanchet, Mr. Singh, myself, we have our top secret security clearance.
Oh, God, the security clearance again.
Within 3 weeks, it wasn't hard, but I felt it was important that I had it so I could be in a position to be informed about that dangerous world and take decisions at. And Mr. Polyev, it is now 950 days, if my numbers are right, since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance, and you've refused.
Welcome back, Nene.
Why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced
Bring up China. Come
Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I'd made that decision, because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir, actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company. But the reality is, you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government, and I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well, there's a couple of interesting things. I think people at home have seen a robust debate here, and it's been a robust campaign, and it has not stopped Mr. Blanchet or Mr. Singh at times during his campaign by making challenges with respect to these issues. So one can address it. I will observe, as someone with a top secret security clearance, that China is not the only country that is accused of foreign interference. And
gentlemen, that is time for this segment. That's our time. Now, closing statements are still a few minutes down the road, so we have a little bit of time for some quick hit Q&As for each of you right now. Short questions, 45 seconds, please, on the answers, and we're going to go left to right.
Sarah, I actually was going to do a little bit of a video on that about the heat pumps and how they're actually not that great, especially for
as the other parties have,
cold places.
Canada's NATO commitment of 2% spending on defense. When would you hit that target?
My aim will be to 2030. That said, when we renegotiate our trade deal with the U.S., I know it's their priority to see us increase our military budget. One of the things I will say to the Americans is the more free trade, tariff-free free trade we have, the faster we can rebuild our military in Canada and reassert our sovereignty. And we will use that money to have heavy icebreakers in the north, Poseidon aircraft, fighter jets, a new base in the north, double the Arctic Rangers, fill the vacancies in the armed forces, and rebuild the warrior spirit that characterized our military since the birth of our country. We will rebuild our forces, and we will stand behind our veterans.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. Mr. Carney, your question. You have cut both the consumer carbon tax and the capital gains tax.
Yeah, I don't know why Carney even bothered asking Pierre that. That was such a stupid question.
Is that an admission that the Liberals made life less affordable for Canadians?
I think let me give you the rationale behind both of those changes. First, with respect to the consumer carbon tax, in effect, it'd become too divisive for Canadians. Canadians received rebates. On the whole, they received more than the tax actually was. But some had represented that it was a tax without a rebate. It became divisive. It didn't serve its purpose. It made a relatively modest contribution to overall climate goals. I got rid of it. First act made Canadians whole. Secondly, but with respect to the capital gains tax, it's come up again, I'll be quick. This is a fundamental issue. We need to build this country. Builders, innovators, entrepreneurs need to be rewarded. That's why I brought it back.
And that's time. Thank you, Mr. Singh.
Welcome, everyone. Glad you guys were able to tune in. Appreciate it.
I said that the level of immigration, first of all, we need immigration. It's fundamentally important to our country. And we speak to any small business owner. You speak to people here in It's
been a great little live stream tonight. I really enjoyed this with you guys.
A couple of things, though, we know we need to be able to set the amount of folks that we welcome to our country at a level that it meets our needs. So I would ensure that we've got an expert panel that makes that determination based on our economic needs. We also know that we should be very clear that the lack of investment from Liberals and Conservatives resulted in the fact that we have a shortage in housing. That's something that we've got to fix. I should also point out that if you are worried about the cuts being proposed by Liberals and Conservatives, vote for New Democrats. We'll fight back to protect Canadians and make sure that we've got the right immigration levels.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. That's time. Mr. Blanchet, Quebec, I believe, is now the only province with a carbon tax. Do you think that's fair?
It's not entirely true. It's not a tax. What Quebec has is a system by which we invite big emission companies, I don't know how to translate that, to reduce their emissions. If they do not, then they have to pay. It goes into a fund which is invested then in reducing emissions. Our partner is California, which makes this a huge deal about reducing emissions. This is what we do. This is to be compared to what Europe does. And by the way, Europe would impose tariffs on Canadian oil if it ever got there. We're quite proud of that. And we have to be responsible because this is much less expensive than doing nothing to fight.
Yeah, sir. I'm gonna do the post scrum.
Left to right again, and 30 seconds this time.
I want to see how many
Mr.
questions
Poilievre, you previously promised to defund the
right-wing
CBC as one
media
of your
gets.
very first acts as Prime Minister. Is that still the plan?
Yes, CBC will continue to operate as a self-funded, Canadian-owned and controlled non-for-profit that raises money like other media organizations through sponsorships, subscriptions, advertising, licensing fees, and countless other things that will ensure Canadians who still want to listen and view its content will be able to do so. And at the same time, we'll allow freedom of the press so that everybody has their voice heard and they can make their own decisions.
Thanks,
Thank you, Mr. Carney.
Appreciate
Next question
that.
to you, 30 seconds. Would you remove some of Canada's legal tax avoidance loopholes that companies that you have worked for have used?
The tax loopholes.
Look, I think that what we need to do is undertake a comprehensive review of our corporate tax
Right off the
system.
bat, he didn't say no.
And do that on the basis of the right principles. We've got to have fairness, transparency, sustainability, and competitiveness. So we need a tax system, a corporate tax system, including being part of a international minimum corporate tax through the OECD.
And that is time. Mr. Singh, the question for you is, if you hold the balance of power after this election is over, what would your price be to support another party?
We've laid out our priorities. We want to make sure we bring down the cost of groceries, build homes that people can afford. I can also tell you that we would defend CBC, unlike Mr. Poilievre, who wants to cut it. And we would close tax loopholes and offshore tax havens, even though Mr. Carney didn't respond to that. And selling stocks and shares to make profits and then having less taxes on that is not hard work. And so those aren't the job creators. The people who are job creators are the hardworking men and women that contribute to our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Monsieur Blanchet, kind of the same question. If you hold the balance of power in the next minority parliament, if it is that, what would be the price of your support?
Respect for Quebec. That's quite easy. I don't want to go against what Canada wants to do for itself.
Holy
I don't want
Blanchette
Canada
is
to
just...
impose an economic vision or a multiculturalist vision on Quebec, which is different in terms of language and values and secularity and equality between people. So I want to be a partner.
Yes, Renee,
and
that's
if
true.
Quebec is
Let your family and friends know this
Canada
is
has
important. We
nothing
got to
to
get
fear
the
from the bloc
conservatives.
because we vote for what is good for Quebec. It only has to be good for Quebec.
Thank you, Monsieur Blanchet. Now, we have one last question for each of you. We'll go right to left this time as I look at you. Bit of an offbeat question. Monsieur Blanchet, what is your biggest regret during this campaign?
That's a very good question. I'm not very fond of regrets, I would say, but we should have started sooner to see that we had to create the environment for a deal in which Quebec and Canada would be, one bigger than the other, but partners to be stronger in front of Mr. Trump and showing that maybe nobody here is the partner to let go alone without being surveyed or controlled or supervised by a Quebec voice.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchet. Same question, Mr. Singh. Your biggest regret of this campaign?
Not being able to meet as many people as I would love to have. It's a short campaign.
Because the NDP didn't have enough money. They couldn't fly a plane or anything like that.
One of the honors of my job is to be able to meet people and to hear their stories and then to
couldn't
take
even
their
have
stories
rallies.
and concerns and bring them to Ottawa and to fight for those people. And so I want you to know, even if I haven't made it to your community, I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that you're represented, that we never let any government cut our health care, that we defend the values that we care so deeply about. We make my life more affordable. That's my commitment to you. Even if I didn't get to see you, that's my commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Carney, same question. Biggest regret of the campaign?
To be honest, it's the same answer. This is an astonishing country. It is an amazing country. And the opportunity and the responsibility that comes with it of being with Canadians, hearing their stories, their challenges, drawing strength and ideas from them, and working to be part of the solution is the greatest honor of my life. But the regret is that it is also a big country, and it is a short period of time.
Yeah, Junior.
Mr. Poilievre,
OnlyFans on the bus. Okay, I'm not going to...
I actually agree with these two gentlemen. I had a rule that at all my rallies, even when they're really big, I would stand in front of a flag and greet every single person and hear their stories and learn their struggles. And that was always touching to me, that they would put their faith in me or in any of us.
Yeah.
But we've been in such a rush because we have to get off to the next event, so we haven't been able to stop and do that. And I want you to know out there, I haven't forgot about you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. It is time now for closing statements, and prior to the debate, you drew lots.
That actually wasn't too bad outside of him mentioning the size, because I know that goes against him.
Certainly, thank you.
But other than that...
Because you voted for New Democrats, we were able to build this country that we love. Universal health care and pensions, because you voted.
Okay, I'm going to mute it just for a second, because I want to address some of these comments here. CYB, yeah, I saw CTV actually. Vashi was questioning the commissioner of the debate commissioner, and that was like one of the first questions was basically the only question she had was about Rebel News outside of why the Green Party got kicked out. She was questioning why Rebel News got so many questions allowed, and the guy was like, "Listen, we've lost twice already in court against Rebel News. We don't want to go again." But I don't, yeah, these guys have so many opportunities to ask questions. The mainstream independent or like the right-wing independent media never gets a chance. And these guys are so butthurt about it.
Is trying to fundamentally change the world economy, the trading system. But really what he's trying to do to Canada, he's trying to break us so the U.S. can own us. They want our land, they want our resources,
well, here
they
goes
want our
again
water,
with the Trump
they
crisis.
want our country. And we're all going to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm ready. I've managed crises over the years. I've built strong economies.
Trump, yeah.
We will fight back with counter tariffs. We will protect our workers and those businesses, and we will build the strongest economy. We will build Canada strong. I'm asking for your support, the honor of doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Monsieur Blanchet.
For 260 years and a little bit more, les Français, devenus des Canadiens, devenus des Canadiens français, devenus des Québécois, you have tried to have them become Canadians.
I'll have to check that
like
out, CYB.
all Canadians. But to no avail, we are different. So let's be economic partners. Let's have a voice chosen by and for Quebecers, an ally for Canadians as equals in front
What's going on,
of
Ron?
Mr. Trump.
Glad you could check it out. Tune in.
Only in Canada could someone start where I began and get to this stage. I was born to a single mother and adopted by school teachers who raised me to believe in the incredible Canadian promise that anyone who worked hard could do anything. That promise feels broken today. Many of you worried about paying your bills, feeding your families, or ever even owning a home. You're worried your kids are in danger. But I'm here to say it doesn't have to be this way. With change, we can restore the Canadian promise so that hard work gets you a beautiful house on a safe street under a proud flag. We can do it with hope for a change.
Gentlemen, thank you for a very spirited debate tonight. 2 quick points before we go. Number one of you celebrated your 60th birthday yesterday on this stage. Yves-François Blanchet, bon anniversaire.
Whoa.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Yves Blanchet is 60 and so is Carney.
Because the Leafs already clinched the Atlantic
But
Division
Yves looks
title,
way better.
And therefore, we didn't need to move the debate to accommodate a hockey game. I'm getting back at my colleague who was in this position last night, and okay, go Habs go, that's fine. With that, we're done. Thank you, leaders, for being here tonight. We are just 11 days from Election Day, April 28th, but there are many ways that you can cast your ballot starting tomorrow at advanced polls. If you intend to vote by mail, that deadline is April 22nd. Make sure to check your voter
Yo, moving the Habs game was actually, or moving the debate yesterday for the Habs game, I didn't mind because it was a great game to watch anyways. But yeah, it's good that the Leafs won as well.
Thank you. Enjoy that.
And there you have it, the English language debate of this 45th general election in Canada coming to an end. As you see there, the leaders of the four major parties gathering in Montreal at Maison de Radio-Canada. Steve Paikin of TV Ontario moderating that debate. So much to dive into, and I'm going to quickly introduce our panel now to go a bit of a postmortem on what we just saw. Susan Smith, strategist,
oh God, I hate this woman, Susan Smith. She's
Jordan Paquette is a former conservative strategist.
Anyways,
with the same company. George Sewell is the former.
So yeah, we're probably gonna do the after show questions here, the little scrums. If you guys want to stick around and tune in, appreciate it. If you don't, you got other things to do. No problem. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to chill in the stream. It was the first time that we were doing a live stream, so it was a little bit rough. But yeah, we're probably going to listen to this for a bit and then see how the questions go. You guys can keep chatting and I'll chime in every once in a while, okay?
We were going to hear from each of the leaders, hold a news conference, if you will, would be taking part in scrums with members of the media. The random order would have had Blanchette up first, followed by Mr. Singh, then followed by Mr. Poliev, and then Mr. Carney, the random order.
All right, Mike. Muito obrigado. Boa noite. Talog. Candy, I'll definitely be making a video most likely tonight, hopefully, depending on how this goes. Again, everyone who's tuning in, thank you. Everyone who has to leave, I hope you have a great night. Dino, thanks for checking in and tuning in. I appreciate it. But yeah, like I said, we're just probably going to be watching this a bit till the scrums come in and the media gets to ask some questions. So yeah.
Final answer at some point, maybe not before we're done this evening, but at some point we will have the final answer. But for now, those scrums have been canceled. Now, I guess that's the sad news. We're not going to hear more from the leaders facing the media.
Scrums were canceled with the leaders?
We will dive into what we just heard right now. You know, I'm going to get you to save your answers in terms of who you think may have won or lost tonight. We'll do that a little bit later. But do you think anything on the ground game has been changed by what we saw tonight? George, I'll get you to start us out.
Well, I
yeah, sorry, Noof, I
think,
was just adjusting the levels.
Certainly
here.
after last night's, and I think tonight's too. You know, I think largely
KY, appreciate it. Thank you, Ursa.
Jagmeet might have squeezed out a bit of a win yesterday.
You have a great night.
I won't break your rule about tonight.
I hope you guys have a good Easter weekend. If you're celebrating, if not,
I do think it's one of those,
enjoy the long weekend.
One of those ones that, you know, all of us talking heads in the press, with due respect.
Wow, so they're not going to do it.
Who won or lost, but I think we'll see in a couple of days. That often is what happens in campaigns. I don't know that it's necessarily a huge move, but I do think that Mr. Carney got buttonholed on.
Right, well, unfortunately, if the scrums are done, I think I'll probably end the stream as well. If the scrums do come back, I will probably restart the stream. But yeah, that being said, you guys all have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning in. I do appreciate it. And I'll go be checking out the... CBC was talking about the scrums being canceled also.
Liberal government, majority or minority.
Yeah, I'm gonna hide all the eggs. How did you know? Yeah, good.
Make sure that they're there to hold them to account.
All right, well,
yeah,
that's the last minute change they were saying today.
In a huge way. I think we definitely saw a debate compared to the French debate.
Muito obrigado, Lopez.
You know, I think much more rigorous exchanges, much more kind of pushing back, a lot more interrupting.
See, these guys cried and complained so much about Rebel News getting the questions. Now they just canceled it. So dumb.
It was interesting though, as George was talking, I thought, what is
Let's see if CBC is actually doing anything.
Like, because the NDP Singh was so friendly.
Hey, my English not so good.
Do you mean my English isn't very good?
Yes.
Growing in Quebec helps them, but you know the gravy for the Conservative campaign is in Ontario, British Columbia, Atlantic Canada, and the polls have shifted against him quite dramatically there. He has a challenge in that there is a real the polls, and that older voters and women voters in particular have turned away from the Conservatives over this realignment that we've seen in the run-up to the campaign, and it has stuck throughout the campaign.
Sorry, here, let me fix the volume.
You needed him to destabilize Mark Carney a little bit there, and also look prime ministerial as well. But early in the debate in particular, you saw him doing that needling, interrupting, and attacking sort of thing that we're used to seeing in committees and that we've seen in the House of Commons, though got very emotional at the end when talking about, the importance of the country and how he feels about things. So the question is, will that land? I mean, is a tonal shift this late, not just in the campaign, but in a political career that goes back to 2004, is it meaningful enough and sincere enough to land with voters who don't like the negativity? I don't know.
Okay, so much more to talk about. Here's where we're at. Rosie, you're going to be back in a few moments because Ed Issue.
Why are these guys outside of the building? I don't understand. Even though it's
Thursday and it's a normal Ed Issue night. We're also going to check in with a group of voters. Did anything stick tonight with them? And then over on CBC Radio, our friend Ian Hannamansing is going to take your calls live on a special cross-country checkup. You can call in using the number that's right there at the bottom of your screen. But if you are watching us on CBC television outside Atlantic Canada, I'm afraid we're going to have to say goodbye. However, live special coverage continues on CBC News Network or wherever you stream CBC News. We are just getting started right here in Montreal.
Yo, Buzz, that was a good one. I love that. They're getting ready.
Now, watching the
for
debate
not having a building.
along with us, of course, was Ashley Burke in Ottawa, furiously taking notes. Ashley, obviously a high-stakes moment for both the Liberal and Conservative leaders. It didn't get more important than this tonight.
Adrian, this is the last time that these leaders will face off, and time is running out for Mark Carney's main rival, Pierre Poilievre, to try and close the gap in this race. Poilievre tried to look prime ministerial, but at times reverted back to the opposition attack dog.
And are you prepared to elect the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal staffers all over again for a fourth term? Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that you are any different than the previous 10 years of Liberal government?
25 seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
Look, I do my own talking points. Thank you very much. The biggest risk we have to affordability, the biggest risk we have to this economy is Donald Trump.
Now, Poilievre is really struggling in the polls with women. The gender gap is huge, and he needs to turn that around if he wants to win this election. The NDP's leader has compared him to Donald Trump, and tonight Poilievre was asked about his plan to get tough on crime, which Trump has also campaigned on. Poilievre defended his pitch to use the notwithstanding clause to override the Charter of Rights, a move to keep mass murderers behind bars until the day they die. And Carney took aim at that.
What is wrong with that?
I think it's a very dangerous slope to override judgments of the Supreme Court of Canada. In fact, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms exists to protect Canadians from people like us on the stage, politicians who may use their power to override fundamental rights.
I'm interested in the rights of victims. Mr. Carney seems to be very interested in the rights of criminals. He says that it's dangerous for me to ensure that mass murderers stay behind bars for life. You know what's dangerous? Turning them loose on our streets.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of.
Was the one that came under attack.
I know, Tony. I mentioned that earlier at the beginning. Sorry, I just turned the volume down a bit. I mentioned that at the beginning of the stream, or the live stream. He's the only one with the Canadian pin on. Carney had like some weird flower, and then the other two didn't have anything. But this whole notwithstanding clause thing that they're complaining about reminds me of the case that just happened in America, where they're complaining that the U.S. sent an El Salvadorian criminal back to El Salvador who's not a U.S. citizen, but the U.S. is complaining that they sent him without actually... Like, he doesn't belong in the U.S. He wasn't a green card holder. He wasn't anything. He was in the country illegally. They sent him out. Oh, hold on. They're talking about the scrums here.
confirmation of what we had already been told for planning purposes, which is that the scrums with the leaders are canceled. The reason that they gave officially at the microphone was that they didn't feel that they could provide or guarantee a proper environment for the scrums. And this obviously comes on the heels of some unusual scrums last night and a situation last night that I know we've been reporting on, but also tension in the room and confrontations that were happening between journalists. And so once that started unraveling, we started to get word that this was what was going to happen. And of course, there was a scrambling to find out if it was true or not. We did get confirmation, but now we actually got official confirmation from the head of the commission that the scrums are canceled.
So, Karina, do you know what happens now at this point? I mean, will there be an attempt by some parties to have scrums somewhere? What's the plan?
That has not been confirmed, but obviously we've reached out to all the parties and are hearing word that some are interested in still doing some kind of scrum that in a different location, perhaps not all together individually. And certainly if that goes ahead, different journalists would dispatch to those scrums, but we don't have confirmation of that. It's a fairly just last minute decision. I should tell you, Adrian, that when we were trying to confirm the rumors, we were obviously reaching out to parties. Some of the parties seemed to have heard the rumors and some hadn't. So in some ways, we were telling them what was going on. So they now have to scramble and see, can they find a location?
This is becoming a shit show,
figure that
man,
all
the way
out
they're
at
handling
this late
this.
hour. And so we need to figure out, and they need to figure out whether that can happen logistically. But if it does, for sure, journalists will go and ask questions and bring that to our viewers when we can.
Yeah,
so,
Tamara and Chris
just one
should be
last
let
thought,
go.
just
Those
because
guys
people at
shouldn't have
home may be
been.
wondering, why are people still there then? I presume people are just filing their stories and hoping somebody else is going to go to a microphone.
I don't know how much hope there is, to be honest. I think people feel like they're pretty certain that that's not going to happen. Although there was an altercation between journalists at the microphone earlier. There certainly was one earlier at one of these media tables. And before that, there was another one, because there is a lot of frustration with these scrums being canceled, that
Exactly, Nuke. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at before I started listening to her.
Canadians about what we saw in the debate, about points that were raised by the leaders, and now that isn't going to be able to happen, or at least not easily and not here. And so there is some blame being thrown around about whose fault that is to have created the situation and this tension that led to this situation. But yes, people still have stories to file in, whether they're digital or radio or television. And so people haven't made an exodus yet, even if there are no scrums to be held here tonight.
I hear that. Lots of work to do. All right, Karina Roman from inside the Maison de Radio-Canada here in Montreal. Thank you. All right, so let's get back to the substance of what we did here.
Well, can I just pick up on Karina if I can?
Yeah, absolutely.
There are, just so people understand, there are a series of police officers stationed behind us to make sure that we remain safe and that the media get out safely. There were not altercations between journalists inside the media room, and there was no altercation between journalists that happened on David's set. These were right-wing people that publish their own agenda and websites who confronted journalists inside the media center, who confronted David on his set, who directly and personally confronted me inside the media center. These are people that the commission decided to accredit, and that is where we are now. The situation deteriorated quickly in terms of how those people were behaving inside a professional media center where you were supposed to be doing your job. And that has left us with no scrums and a strange security situation on a night where we should be focused on the things that you want to ask us about.
It certainly didn't look like this last night.
Just one point on that. We are inside a secure perimeter. You have to go through screening processes that involved the RCMP. This set we were on, they came in with bomb-sniffing dogs, searched our bags to make sure everything was safe. That's to make sure the leaders are safe and everybody in here is safe. And for whatever reason, the way this evolves throughout the day and yesterday, the Montreal police are here putting up caution tape, escorting people out. And the leaders of Canada's 4 parties who were able to participate in this debate, because they, what was the phrase? Didn't feel they could provide or guarantee a proper environment. They're not going to take questions from journalists. And look, I know not everybody thinks it's all about us, but it is an important part of the ritual of elections and democracies and accountability. And it is part of the stress test that these leaders go through as they seek to lead this country, and spend your tax revenue and make laws, and some serious things being discussed there tonight about criminal justice and using the notwithstanding clause. These are all things that require a serious and mature debate, not financially motivated stunts. And this is where we've ended up in this election. With everything going on with Donald Trump and everything going on in this economy and everything going on in the world, this is where the national Canadian election debate has ended up. And it's just exhausting. And it is the end product of multiple years of rage farming for narrow political gain and financial benefit for a very small group of people who blew this up today.
And Canadians, as a result, don't get one more rare opportunity.
Wow, these
to
guys are a
hear
bunch
the
of
leaders answer
losers.
questions.
It sounds like, and to Karina's point, it sounds like the NDP there is going to hold some sort of scrum tonight, probably around 9:45
At his hotel,
Eastern,
I
at his
believe.
hotel.
Yep.
Others may choose to do the same.
Do not say which hotel,
I know.
because it'll create a security incident.
But it does, the scrums are intended to follow up on some of the things in the debates, right? To ask more pointed questions about things that maybe didn't get full answers. And so unfortunately that is not going to happen tonight, but I understand that security decisions had to be made.
Well, this is where we can ask the questions.
That's right.
This is where we can try to
Look how
deconstruct,
angry Cochrane
more
is.
of what happened.
This guy's such a man-child.
Housing was brought up a lot. Housing was a big deal.
Thank you.
What did you hear that is interesting or different to you?
I think one of the things that Mr. Carney pretty effectively pointed out is, both Pierre Poilievre and Mr. Carney have promises around removing the GST for homes to varying degrees. But one of the things that Mr. Carney said was, I am also interested in creating rental properties, affordable housing. I want to do things in a different way. I think Pierre Poilievre's approach to government, I know, is that there be less government, that the market can sort of sort things out. And so the policy he's designed is intended to do that, to hope that developers will come in.
Is the volume still
to hope
okay,
that
guys?
buyers will find homes, because there will just naturally be more if there's more incentive to build. Mr. Carney's is a little bit of both of those things, I would say. And if you're thinking about, okay, well, how is my kid going to afford a house in 5 or 10 years?
That China
you
question
also
was
need to think about
an
whether
alley-oop
there'll
for
be
the
a
guy.
house to own.
Right.
And so the supply issue for the Liberal Party seems to be as important as the trying to get things going.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks, Buzz.
it's interesting in this somehow
like Rosie O'Donnell.
Housing has become a federal issue over the last number of years, when, quite frankly, mayors, city councilors, and premiers have really gotten off the hook for the role that they have played in this, either by not freeing up land, not changing zoning policy, or in their
That's a good
unwillingness
point,
to raise
Junior.
property taxes on existing homeowners. They jack up development fees and bury all of those costs into the mortgages of new home buyers, and inevitably just making the starting point of a house before it's even built so high, it has made it inaccessible to people. So it's going to take the federal government, whoever wins this election, to use the power of its treasury and the moral suasion that you can bring from the bully pulpit of the Prime Minister's office to get movement on this. There are ideas there, like the housing accelerator and the tax incentives, that is going to require, that is going to unlock things. All of the parties have a blend of ideas that can work here. One of the challenges working against this, though, comes back to the skilled labor challenge. And if you also look at the consensus on limiting immigration and capping it at lower levels than we've seen the last couple of years, a lot of which has been very problematic because of just student visas and low-wage workers
Yeah,
being
if you
brought
do
in.
see older
There's going to be
photos
a
of
collision
Rosie,
there that may
she
require
was
some tweaking
I don't know what
of all of
happened,
these
but yeah.
things, because you have to build it
And
at
you
a
got a
scale
point,
and at
Glenn.
a speed.
They are scared of rebel. I don't know.
We just don't
Like,
do in this country.
difference
and you
of
have to do
thought
it with a
is
workforce that
terrifying
just
to
does not
them.
exist in this country right now, and you have to do it in a time frame that may go beyond what is
Thank you,
tenable
Glenn.
in a
I
typical
appreciate you tuning into the videos
So,
whenever I put them out.
however, whatever force multiplier you can bring to it after this election,
Yes, changes. The
is going to
media
also
scrums are canceled,
be
unfortunately.
challenged by what focus you can bring to it after this election.
They're scared of rebel
once
news.
the trade renegotiations and the entire recalibration of the continental relationship on economy, on security, on defense, and on integration, and the pivot to Europe and Asia and all these other things, it's an enormous challenge. And Pierre Poilievre really tried to make this a key part, right? Like, is food cheaper and our houses cheaper than they were? They absolutely are not. Now, there's a bunch of reasons for that. Money printing is not one of them. That's something we can talk about later.
Now that you said that,
it is going to be an enormous challenge for how you function after this election.
Yeah, to your point, he a few times he threw out the figure 350,000 young trades workers to help build.
Yeah, Pierre did a great job towards the end there.
That is, 2/3 of the population of Newfoundland and Labrador. That's more than the population of Prince Edward Island, right? That's a lot of people.
All right, we'll get back to you shortly. For the people who are just joining us, clearly we're coming to you live from Montreal tonight, where the major party leaders just competed in the only English language debate ahead of the April 28th election. Now, in the past few weeks at the National, we've been traveling the country a bit, talking with voters about what they need from their next government. We were in St. John, New Brunswick, Brampton, Ontario, Medicine Hat, Alberta, Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. In each place we went to, people talked about the need to keep an open mind and a desire to follow these debates carefully. So we had an idea. Tonight, we thought we'd have a reunion of sorts, a reunion for me at least, bringing together people from all across the country.
Yeah,
so
Blanchette did a good job attacking Carney, too.
In Brampton, Chris Vickers, and in Medicine Hat, Emma Bice. It's really nice to see you. I know you haven't met each other. It feels like old home week for me, seeing you. And I want to start with your reaction to the debate. And I'd really like to start with you in Brampton, Chris, because when we met a few weeks ago, you were really torn about how to vote. You said you were 50-50 when you were watching this debate. Did anything sway you?
I'm going to say it swayed me towards Liberal.
Oh my God, what a loser.
He was very well spoken, and he never, ever interrupted, where everyone else did. That's annoying.
What?
That's it. It was his demeanor. That's it. Okay. Emma, I'm curious because in Medicine Hat, you were very clear. You were very clear you're voting Conservative, but also very clear that you wanted to hear the debate. And I'm curious why and what you were listening for and what you're thinking tonight.
Well, for the debate for me, it only goes so far. I feel like, when you have a job, you get a job interview, but then you have a probationary period after. It's because the interview is a minimal view of who that person is and how they will work. And I feel like that is what the debate is an actual, the job interview part. And I just feel like after watching it, it was very interesting. It was really good to hear all the points that everyone made. But for me, the actual
Paul,
job
they were talking
interview
about
we've
that.
seen from the Liberals has been over the last 10 years. And they have failed immensely at their job, in my opinion. And even with years and years to fix their mistakes along the way. And I felt like actually the Bloc Québécois leader, he had very good points in there. And I actually really liked everything that he kind of had to say. He actually reminded me of Danielle Smith in the sense that he's
Blanchette did actually a good job attacking Carney. He did a great job tonight.
And I think more leaders need to be like that. And I feel like Mark Carney maybe didn't answer or interrupt people as much because I believe
Renee, these are just some random people they questioned over the
it's
past few weeks,
easier to stay
and now they're
quiet than
bringing
to
them
speak
back
up.
in to see if they've changed who they're going to vote for.
And you're the only one here who's already voted because Lucky Duck, you're off on vacation. So how did this debate land for you?
It was good. It was it was an opportunity for me to kind of test my own resolve, my own decision making up to this point. I enjoyed watching the debate, and I liked kind of how they went at each other on a few topics that I wasn't as certain on. So I enjoy kind of how they dug into some of those topics, like housing. I
feel like she's a liberal voter.
Debate, surprisingly, but yeah, no, I feel good about my vote, so that was good news. It's always an opportunity to kind of test yourself to see if you're and a bit of a gut check, I guess, to see if you're on track. Yeah.
It's a bit early for buyer's remorse, though. I mean,
I know. Well,
we'll see. We'll see
when
what
I was
happens.
watching, I was like, "Am I going to have buyer's remorse on this?" But no, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, Chris, I think of you when we talked because you're an auto worker, right? You have a ton of concerns, and I know you said you were, soothed by the tone of what you saw. But what didn't you hear tonight that you were hoping to hear?
I think I heard everything I wanted to hear. The Liberal Party didn't answer every question.
So then how did you hear everything you wanted to
I
hear?
guess Pierre Poilievre was going on about change. I think people have heard that so much. I think, and I honestly think people want that. I want that too, but I don't.
So what's the problem?
I don't think he's the right person. I think Carney's very smart. I think he said the right things. I think he didn't speak, not because he didn't have answers. I think he didn't speak because I think he was almost judging everybody else on their answers that everybody else wants.
This is a Liberal voter, folks.
The French guy, I don't even know why he was there.
Okay. Well, he's there because he meets the criteria.
But he's not
there because he
Prime
meets
Minister,
the criteria.
At least he was smart.
No, but it's about percentage. It's about having sitting MPs, and it's about percentage in the poll. So he meets 2 of the 3 criteria. It's like why the Greens weren't there, because they didn't meet, according to the commission.
Okay, I
minute,
get that. Okay.
The criteria. So the advanced polls, I'm looking at the clock. They open in like 11 and a half hours, or they open very shortly. And I think, unlike Anne, most Canadians haven't voted yet, and I'm curious what you want Canadians to think about.
Is anyone else going to do advanced polling or advanced voting, I should say?
You've done it.
Oh, what I want people to think about when they go to the polls? Well, I think when you vote, it can be like politics is emotional, and I think we as
politics should not be emotional.
Make emotional
politics should be you.
I think it's like
look at who you're going to vote for
and run through the platforms again and see like. Which really
Okay, I don't want to talk over while she's talking, but this is a problem that I have. People keep talking about it's emotion. It should not be emotion. You should look at the policies that are presented to you and think through it carefully. It shouldn't just be like, oh, I feel like this guy will be a good candidate, or I feel like this guy would be a good fit. You actually need to look at what they're presenting and think about it logically. This guy from Brampton who's saying, oh yeah, Carney didn't interrupt anybody. Who cares? That's not the point. Look at the record that the Liberals have had for the past 10 years. That's what you should be looking at. Carney has the exact same people in his cabinet and everything like that. This is not the guy that you want. And then he's talking about, oh yeah, Pierre Poilievre's talking about change, and that is something that I want. That's something that I need. But I think the Liberals are the ones that will bring the change, even though they haven't done anything like that in the past 10 years. Like, God, these people are so dumb. Sorry, that's my little rant.
No pipeline.
Oh, sorry.
Done the carbon tax, which is what Pierre had said multiple times for many years. So I believe that we are in a position that simply a change of face is
Sorry,
not
Junior,
nearly
I don't
enough
vote
of a
with my
solution
feelings,
to get
though.
Canada going back to the right direction. We logically need a bigger change than that, which would be to give another party a chance to see what they can do for Canadians, in my opinion. I honestly believe
Have a good night, Glenn. Appreciate you taking the time to tune in.
They're admitting that we've been hurting. We can't afford food, can't afford housing. They admit that they have brought all of that on. They've been in power for 10 years, but they say again,
that guy's
this
brain
time
is
we
on
will fix
something
it.
right now.
When is enough going to be enough? We should all
Some
know by
Carney
now that the
juice.
Liberal Party doesn't deserve another shot, and I hope that people see that and go to the polls and vote for any other party that we can have actual change.
Okay. You know what? Now we got to go. We just ate Chris's time. I'm really sorry about that, guys. It was really lovely to see all of you. Thank you for being so open with us all the way along. It's been kind of fun. So back to Rosie and David.
Nice to hear from a focus group.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but pipelines. It comes up again and again. It came up every panel we did.
Yeah.
In to that point, before we talk about it, why don't we hear a little bit of what was said about it tonight?
Well, Mr. Carney refused to answer the question about pipelines. Just the other day, he said that he doesn't necessarily think we need to build pipelines. And I asked Mr. Carney why he would keep in place this anti-pipeline law that effectively empowers Donald Trump to have a total monopoly on our single biggest export. Why would you not repeal this liberal law?
I'm interested in getting energy infrastructure built. That means pipelines, that means carbon capture storage, that means electricity grids. And here's how you do it. And we've already moved in the first
That's a good
month.
one.
Cooperation agreements with the provinces. Guess what? We are a federation. You need to cooperate with Quebec. You need to cooperate with the provinces. You need to get First Nations and Indigenous
Brampton
people
Bro
buy-in.
is no good.
Okay. What do you make of that exchange?
I think it's illuminating if this is an important issue for you, energy development, which also goes hand in hand with climate change, which also was talked about.
And tariffs, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. And Pierre Poilievre and many people in Western Canada believe that C69 is fundamentally a block of any pipeline development
thank
going
you so
forward
much for the
because
super
the
chat.
assessment is
Round
so heavy,
2
so
of Red
onerous.
Bulls on me for those
he would
longer
get rid of
editing
that
nights
immediately,
leading up to the election. Just
and he would,
a little
says,
bit of extra
bring in
horsepower
and
for
have
you.
projects
Really
developed very
appreciate
quickly.
that. Thank you so
Mark
much.
Carney has a different approach. Not only did he set up an energy corridor with the provinces in his first days as prime minister, but he also is promising a one project, one review. What does that mean? Well, if a province has
That's a
done a
good law,
review
Joe.
that the federal government is willing to
Yabba dabba
accept,
doo.
then it will give it the red stamp and get it going as well. So Mr. Poilievre doesn't believe that's possible as long as C69 is in place. Mr. Carney says it is. These are pretty different views. Even if they both say they want pipelines, they're both going to go about it in different ways. And I would say on the other flip side of
But
that,
Carney's
then,
not gonna
Mr.
build
Carney is keeping the
pipelines.
industrial carbon price in place. Mr. Poilievre is not. So that also gives you a sense of where they're trying to put the climate change and the fight against climate change. I don't know that one is better than the other, but certainly they are both committing to big projects as a
appreciate that,
response
Junior.
to your
Thank you so
point,
much.
Donald Trump, and the fact that this country needs to start doing something dramatic to grow.
Carolyn, that's
Interesting,
right.
though, to hear
Rosemary doesn't
Blanchet
delete.
say, hey, look, in 3 or 4 years, Donald Trump won't be there. I mean, barring some sort of constitutional amendment we're not yet aware of.
Renee, man,
But
you're
there
too
won't be
funny.
a new pipeline. There's a long view that has to be taken.
There won't
but
be a pipeline.
If the lesson from Donald Trump, and I think this is it, if the lesson from Donald Trump is we need to be stronger in our own country and have more
Thanks,
opportunity
Stephen.
in our own country, that this is a window for that, then there's no harm in doing these things anyway, right? I think that's fundamentally what everyone is saying. Build up the country in some way, whether he's there
Take
or
it as a
not.
lesson.
That's right.
Well, look, Donald Trump may not be there in a couple of years, but J.D. Vance might be,
Correct.
or who knows what
Who
happens to
cares?
Trumpism post-Trump. I mean, the Republican Party went from small C conservative to big C cult almost overnight, and a lot of this is ingrained there. Even as he does these economically damaging trade and industrial policies. Mr. Poilievre is partly right and partly wrong on what he said about the reliance on the United States. It is very much the market for the vast majority of the oil that comes from Alberta. The TMX pipeline and its expansion has increased options to get to other markets, and it has reduced the discount on Western
David
Canadian
wonders why
select
people
oil to
think
some
that he's a
degree. It's
liberal or
raised the price of
left-leaning.
oil
Like,
over
this
there.
guy's not partisan.
But the time frame with which it would take to build new pipelines to deal with some of the issues, for example, when asked about Ukraine, he said we can definance Putin by building a pipeline and getting natural gas to Europe. Well, if that war is still going by the time a pipeline is built and the LNG receiving facilities in Europe are built and, the electricity capacity is built,
There are other
then
problems.
there's a much bigger problem going on in Ukraine.
Yeah,
And-
I just
and so,
appreciate
like,
you being here. That's
the
all I
solution to
really
every
care
problem
about.
is not a pipeline.
Thank you for
but
the
sort of
thought of it.
hostility
But
that
as long as you're
the
here
energy sector
and
believes they felt
just enjoying the
from
community,
the
that's all that
Trudeau
really
government
matters.
is
Sorry to hear that, though.
lessening
That's really a
somewhat
shitty
with Mark
situation.
Carney. He says he's a pragmatist and he's willing to go in this direction. We'll see. What you hear from people in the oil and gas sector and the people who want to do this and invest in carbon capture and believe in climate change policies is that the team around him is still the team that was around Trudeau. And there are still people who are very much our environmental true evangelists and true believers in
Stephen
the
Guilbeault,
hard
Jonathan
2035
Wilkinson.
targets and the hard 2050 targets that were set out. The suggestion, as Mr. Carney, is has less orthodoxy on that and willing to be more flexible. We'll see if he wins and what he actually does on these things.
Okay, so now it's time for it's the strategy conversation, which we have to have. And I know people are interested in that. Only way to do that is for a special debate edition of that issue, my friend.
The Liberal government has weakened our economy with anti-energy laws.
Mr. Polyev, you spent years running against Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax, and they're both gone, okay? They're both gone. And we're in a new
impersonation. And while these two compete about who's more pro-pipeline, I think what we need to do is, it's clear. The Liberals bought a pipeline, they built a pipeline. I don't know what Pierre is complaining about.
You can't do something and the opposite, and you can't fill people's mind with nonsense.
I am Rosemary Barton, and that was just a taste of some of the English debate tonight with just under 2 weeks till Election Day. Have the leaders made their case to Canadians about why...
Now, just a question to you guys. Do you want to continue watching this? Because I know not a lot of people want to listen to Rosemary and these panel of idiots. Maybe you want to hear how delusional they are. Maybe that's what we can do. But if you don't want to listen to this, I get it. I'll end the stream then, and then we can... touch base another day. But if you guys are still down to watch this, I don't mind watching it with you guys. So let me know.
But also outlining his own plan. So I think
away from Rosemary. Okay. All right. So I think on that note, I'm gonna call it a night. I'll probably work on making a video for tomorrow, hopefully. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining me on one of the first live streams. Hopefully we can do this a little bit more. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned in, who commented, CYB for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Everybody else who was here took the time to spend it on my channel. Really do appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get some more of this going on. The live streams are fun. I'll try to work out all the kinks with the volume and talking over when certain aspects are happening. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I will catch you guys on another one. Thanks so much. Have a good night, everyone. Take it easy.